Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tim Dillon Show. The book is Fight Oligarchy, Bernie Sanders. It is out everywhere. You can get it on Amazon.com. You can go to a local bookstore, which is always a good idea. Support a local bookstore, and I'm sure the author of this book will appreciate that. Bernie Sanders, Senator, thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. This book, when you walked in, we talked about it is not big, but it is something that you've been talking about for many, many years. What is the importance of writing this now? Because you just got off
Sydney, baby,
a tour
time to
with the
eat.
same name about fighting oligarchy.
I think, Tim, this is kind of an unprecedented moment in American history. And I think what the book touches on are issues that the media in general, my colleagues in Congress are not very comfortable dealing with. And that is power and wealth. Who owns the country? How's that? Pretty simple question.
Yeah.
Who really has the power? And what we are looking at right now is a moment in history where we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had. And I think what the American people have got to decide is whether they are comfortable with a situation in which one person, Mr. Musk, owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. Is that really what America is supposed to be about? Top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 93%. And
I think we did,
while
yeah.
the very richest people in America are becoming phenomenally richer, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck.
It's a huge problem. And I think that most Americans would hear those numbers and think that there's a big problem where you have one person controlling more wealth than 52% of the country, which is probably around 150 million people, maybe more. And that also is a huge problem for democracy. There's a huge problem for democracy. Trump, Kamala Harris, anybody in my lifetime that has been outside of yourself, that has been a contender for the presidency from a major political party is backed usually by the same groups of people. They're very wealthy lobbyists, donors. The donor class is incredibly powerful. You know, the landmark Supreme Court decision to regard political donations as speech, right?
Citizens United.
Citizens United, thank you. The name escaped me. I can donate as much money as I want to a candidate, and it's considered speech.
Right.
Where did we go wrong? Was it always as bad as it is now?
Look, money, people with money always had power. But Citizens United Supreme Court decision opened the
Did I
door
tell her yesterday? She
in
told me
creating a very
she didn't want me to cut
corrupt,
them up. She wanted more strawberries
campaign
because I gave her
finance
some like
system.
that.
And you said it all.
And then she said, "I don't want them
Right
cut." I
now,
was like, "Okay."
in the
And
Republican
then
Party,
she wanted to
Mr.
eat them
Musk
like a
himself
strawberry. And I was
contributed
like, "Oh, that's cute."
$270
So then I put little
million
dips on her
to
plate,
help elect Trump.
and she started
Then
dipping
he
her
was given
strawberry and eating it. And
the
she was like,
opportunity to be the most powerful person in government for many, many months.
Like the real chocolate.
Democratic
I actually
billionaires
thought
play
we
a
both
very
started
important
talking
role in
about that. You don't
selecting
see that hard
who the
chocolate much
Democratic
anymore.
candidates are.
I was like,
And in a
is it
sense,
illegal or was
through
it
their
something
money,
bad?
No.
kind of controlling what those
I was
candidates will
like, that
stand
used
for
to
and
be
what they will
everywhere.
fight for.
Like, people love
So
that.
the power
So I
of
was like,
money
yeah, we need to get some
right
of that
now,
chocolate.
today,
Dip it and it gets
is
hard.
extraordinary in both political parties. And if we're going to save American
I think we
democracy,
do have some under
we've got to get rid of this, in my view, we've
Really?
got to get rid of this campaign, this Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And you got to move to public funding of elections. So in other words, if you want to run against me, I shouldn't be able to outraise you 10 to 1 or 50 to 1. I do that, I'm going to beat you every time.
Everyone got the dipped cone.
You show
Yeah,
that
you
you have
wanted the
support,
cone dip,
you
dude.
deserve a certain amount of
It was
public
that soft
funding, I
ice
will get
cream
the same
so
amount
hard.
of funding.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
for it. Your idea is better than
I
mine,
don't know if it
and you
doesn't
win
do
the
it
election.
anymore.
Let's have
Too
campaigns
messy.
based on
They don't have the
ideas,
skill base.
not billionaires
Not
putting
enough
huge
money
amounts of
to
money
do
into ugly
Their
30-second
workers aren't
ads.
skilled enough to
For
do
the
it,
Supreme
dude. I
Court to
guarantee
reverse
it.
the Citizens United decision, in your estimation, what would
It
have
doesn't
to
sound like
happen?
skilled
Well,
work.
the Supreme Court ain't going to
McDonald's
do
can be
it.
Right.
skilled
We're going to
work
have to
sometimes.
the congressional action. We could do it through
And you've
Congress.
seen the
And how
menu.
would you
You've
do it through
seen
Congress?
Go through
McDonald's. They've
legislation,
lost quality
basically,
workers.
which says
And
that
people make fun of
you
people who work
outlaw
at McDonald's.
super PACs,
Well,
among other things. That's the first thing.
Who
you
are
do.
the
why
main
McDonald's
opponents of
food is
this
shit,
in
dude.
Congress? If this were to come on the floor,
It's
I'm not
actually
asking you
harder
to
to
call out
fucking
names.
Well, I'll
put a
call
hot
out names.
hamburger
Mitch
out the
McConnell
window
was one of the
most of
leaders in the
time
effort
than you think.
Right.
as a Republican. But
All
the big
those
money
little
interests
kids
love
were
this.
actually working pretty
Why
hard
wouldn't they?
for
If
you.
you're a
Right.
billionaire, you
There
want
was
to
a
pick
bunch
your
of young
candidate for
kids, a
president.
bunch of young
Hey,
people.
what's a few
They were
$100 million
working
to
hard
you?
for
It's a
you
great. They
motherfuckers.
love it.
You
Money
belittled
talks,
and made fun of
and
them.
they like
Talked
that
about they were
process.
Is the
brainless.
the
Well, you
Democratic
sat in a
Party,
fucking cubicle
in
and
your
did
view,
10 key?
a bigger
You
obstacle
accused some. You
to
did 10 key,
your
dude.
ideas
How
becoming
brainless is
mainstream
fucking
in the
that? You
Republican
were a
Party?
reading program that
Look,
did,
the Republican
and you
Party
accused
in
a
the
fucking guy
last
who
15 years
Yeah, it was
under
crazy.
Trump has undergone a
Being
major
so far
transformation.
below
It used
you,
to
it
be
wasn't
kind
worth.
of a conventional
You wouldn't
George
let your
W. Bush,
children play
a
together or
center-right
date.
party.
There's no fucking
Right?
way.
That's what it was.
Oh, Mom,
It represented the
remember for
wealthy
homeschool script?
corporate
Just the
interest
whole
banks,
tribe
etc.
chocolate
What Trump
covered
has
stuff.
done is really
Like the
transformed
chocolate
that
covered
party. He won
bananas.
more working class
Okay, so do I send a little
votes
bit
than
of
did Kamala
eggplant
Harris.
and some pasta with some sauce on
And
top?
he has
And
created
some garlic
in the
bread.
Republican
And then
Party
some
a
garlic bread?
right-wing extremist
Nice little
party.
box, shouldn't it?
And also what worries me is not
How
only
do you
their
keep it warm?
ideology, is this cult of the individual.
Mom will
You know what
warm
I'm
it up.
talking about when I mention that, Tim?
Oh, yeah.
Explain it.
Yeah,
What I mean
I
is
think
that,
I do.
look, it's one thing. You're a Republican, I'm a Republican, you're a
Some
Democrat, I'm a
music
Democrat. We
for
argue
recess.
amongst ourselves. Your
It's
job
right-
is to
oh, it's
represent
not
your
right.
congressional district, your state, if you're in the Senate. Right now in the Republican Party, with very
But
few
yeah, Mom, I
exceptions,
see you
and there are
last
some,
time. You
they
have your
follow
back.
what
You're
Trump
like,
says, and they are afraid
Mhm.
to move in any different direction. I'll give you one example, a very clear example. A
so
guy
you
named
let him
Tom
go
Tillis. That
like
name mean
over there
anything to
to
you?
the
Yeah.
garden?
Tom is a
Oh,
conservative
that's fine.
senator from North
Miss Hold
Carolina.
and Miss
So the guy
Mac let
read,
us do that.
made the
Oh,
mistake
yeah.
of actually reading this
Probably
big, beautiful
'cause
bill that Trump
fourth graders.
brought forth.
Mhm.
He concluded, he said, this is going to be a disaster for North Carolina.
Too young.
Hundreds of thousands of
young,
people are going to
out
lose
of
their health
control.
care.
Too much Big
Health care
7, bro.
premiums are going to soar.
Oh
I
my
can't vote
gosh.
Let's cut down on that a
the
little bit.
next
Okay,
day.
that I officially know how to
Trump
do
was
6,
all over
7
social
numbers
media
from
attacking
my
this guy.
hands.
Oh,
And the
you do?
billionaires were
Look,
saying, we are going to
6,
spend unlimited amounts of money to
7.
defeat you in your primary. A day later, Mr. Tillis said,
Gone viral.
bye-bye, I'm out of
The
here. I made this
infection is
crap.
He
spreading.
retired.
He retired.
Yeah.
Because he was going to face
The
a very,
mind
very
virus
difficult
is
primary.
spreading.
And that's
They're
what
not
it is right now.
controlled.
You are a
It's funny
congressman.
till you
You
get
kind
sent
of
to the
disagree with
camps,
Trump
bro.
on this. Are you really going to open your mouth and have
You think it's
Elon Musk
funny
saying,
until you
okay,
get
we're going
sent
to
to the
primary
camp,
you.
you get no
My
phone
guy's going to
call.
get $50 million to
Right.
lead you.
You know, they don't
My-
do phone calls
My
in the
wonder
camp.
is, because I look at, and I agree with you, and everything you just said,
People even remember
100%,
that
the
anymore?
Republican Party's
I don't
become a
know
cult
how
of
that started. You get a
personality.
phone call. That's
When
not in
somebody
the
goes, we're going to
Constitution, but
release the
it
Epstein
really
files,
was, dude.
and
You
then
got,
they
you got
don't,
so
and then
many phone
everybody
calls
moves
when you
on,
invited
and then they
and it
go,
wasn't just
what
one.
about Jimmy
Usually.
Kimmel?
They let you
Yeah,
call a few
100%.
people.
My question,
Usually
though,
give you
is
like
the
so much
climate
time.
in which, because there's
Who the fuck
no
started
doubt
that,
the
dude?
Republican
Oh,
Party's
no.
undergone
That
a
wasn't me,
transformation.
people. That was
But also, the Democratic
only
Party
a Christian
seems
would
to have
fucking do that,
overgone,
dude.
undergone
Only
a
Christian.
similar transformation away from
Is
working
that enough,
people
you think?
and towards
Mhm.
college-educated,
Water quality.
There's art
credentialed,
club. It is.
managerial types
Exciting.
that, have 4-year degrees, have
Okay,
graduate
Thursday
degrees,
is usually my
live in
favorite
urban
day.
centers, are more concerned with social
Good thing today's
politics
Thursday.
Oh my
than
gosh.
they are economic politics.
What's your
And the
favorite day?
Democratic
Did you
Party
notice?
seems to have
Oh
diverted
my
a lot
gosh,
of
I
energy
just said
from the economic
it's Art
message
Club
that
Day, my
you
favorite day,
championed
Dad.
into
Oh,
kind of the social justice
Okay.
sphere,
Or
which has proven pretty
Fridays
unpopular
in
with
assemblies.
a lot of those working class
Because
voters that went to
assemblies are
Trump.
fun, because
All right, let
after
me
the
answer you by
assemblies,
saying yes and
we
no.
get like
Okay.
How's that?
It's a great
PE,
answer.
so we get to do
Yeah,
it
after
for
all, I am
extra
a United States
minutes.
Senator. What do you
Politician.
expect from me?
Yes
Yes
and
and
no
no.
is a good answer.
So it's like Thursday
All right,
and
let's start it
Friday.
off. 50 years ago,
I'm gonna
when
get right.
Harry Truman was president, certainly when
My
FDR
legs
was
hurt.
president, you walk out on the street, you say to somebody,
I still hurt.
which political party in America represents the American working class? Answer, Democratic Party,
What's up,
right?
girl?
Yeah.
Everybody knew that.
Yes.
That was
What's
the answer.
up? What's up?
In the 1970s,
Well, that's That's what
some
you get.
Democratic leaders
Talking
became
smack.
very, very smart.
Yep.
And they
Oh.
said, hey, Republicans are getting all of this money from corporations and the rich. What are we knocking our brains out? Why don't we do the same, right? Let's start hustling some money from big money interests. And that began the process of moving the Democratic Party away from the working class
but it's
of
not
this
up
country.
to like
And when we
Americans
talk about
throwing in
social issues,
spaghetti and
I think the
eggplant and
Democrats
bread
deserve
and stuff else.
credit
No, you know, some
for
American shit
fighting
like
for
her
women's
got a
rights,
thing that
which I
clamps
think
down,
is
pushes
extremely
that.
important. The right of
That's
women
all I'm
to
saying.
be able to control their own
Like
bodies.
this is her like my daughter.
And
This is perfect for my
for a lot
daughter.
of reasons, grassroots
Yeah, trying
activism,
to
the
show a
women's
real
movement,
meal in
and the
there.
Democratic Party, we have made some real
Little.
progress. You know, like 40 or 50 years ago,
And
you
you
looked
could
at
see where
Congress,
there'd be a
there were
little
almost
piece of
no women
fish,
there.
a little piece
Yeah,
of
like no
seaweed
women
with
governors,
that, you know.
etc.
And it all fit
Right
in
now,
there
you got women who are
perfectly.
cops, they're sheet
But
metal
yeah, when I'm
workers,
trying to shove
they're
in
United States
pasta
Senate.
and tomato
We have made
sauce with
progress.
fried
The Democrats
eggplant
deserve credit
and then some
for
garlic
helping to do
bread.
that.
I was gonna say, and then
In
bread.
terms of ending bigotry, look, I'm a little bit
That's
older
what I
than you,
need
but I
something.
can
I
remember
need
when I
stuff
was
to
a
wear.
kid. No great secret.
All right, we
If you're
got that.
black in the
Let's
South,
mix it up. Yeah, this looks
massive amounts of segregation.
Oh, and those
You
clothes never
couldn't
got
drink at a
transferred
bloody
over.
water
See,
fountain.
that's all.
Your
The new
kids couldn't go
rule.
to an integrated school. You know,
That's all with us.
civil rights
Shit just
movement,
got.
Dr. King and
I
others,
would just.
along
We
with
need to fold
Democrats,
this shit.
Lyndon
That's all.
Johnson, etc., help end bigotry in this country.
That's
At least
all
took us a long way to ending bigotry. I
You
think that's important. Gay rights.
It's
Hey,
better
how many
than
years
not.
ago?
We,
30 years ago, would you
Yeah.
have ever believed that we have gay marriage in
No,
America?
I mean, and those things are all 100% very good things that happened. But I do look at the last election, and I think there seems to be, and you may agree, an outsized
Don't gaslight me,
focus
bro.
Good.
on
Everything I say is
cultural
true.
and
Don't
social
gaslight
issues
me.
that to many
I know.
people
Oh,
are
here
a
it comes.
luxury. And not to everyone, but to a lot of people,
My
they're a
perception is
luxury.
true. Yours
Fair
are not.
point.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
gaslight me.
So the point is not that fighting for women's rights or ending racism in
Each
this
one,
country
actually,
or
that
homophobia, those
one
are good
that's
things.
dirty is we need
But
more like that.
if your
Little
point is
square
that
ones
in
with
that whole
3
process,
compartments in it.
the Democrats more or less turn their backs
I
on the
know
working
Ziploc
class
ones
of this
actually
country
work
and
pretty
the
good.
enormous crises facing working people, I would agree with you if
Yeah.
that's your point.
Chris Hedges, who's a writer,
Yep, your
has
Izzy Bear's
described
going to
it
see her
as
cousins
you have the
today.
Republican Party, which is a party about
Yep.
oligarchy, where you have very
Oh, you're all right.
powerful
You can saw 'em.
individuals. Some of them own companies, some of them run hedge funds or private equity or whatever it is.
Yep.
And they have
That's right.
tons of power. And
You're
the
in
Republican
jail.
Party seems to have embraced that.
You
see
in
all of the tech
jail,
people
bro.
lining up with
Yep.
President Trump.
You
But
got
Chris
to
Hedges
show
has
up
described the Democratic Party as more of a
every day.
corporation where you have
It's every day, bro.
a lot of wealthy interests that have gotten together. And
You gotta
while
show
it's
up
not
every
as
day.
unpredictable and chaotic as a bunch of different oligarchs, it also
No break.
immiserates
Every
the
day.
lives of people because the core economic concerns of the population on
There's
issues
a
like
baby.
healthcare, housing, aren't being addressed.
Absolutely.
So my question to you is, you know, for example, there are a lot of ideas that a lot of people can get behind. One of the things I think that hurts the Democratic Party is the perception of that party as not being
Mom, can you eat the
fully
grapes?
competent when it
Did
comes
you
to
just not
public
have time?
safety. There's a lot of cities in America that are primarily run by Democrats
I may give him
that
to Sydney.
are cities that you would, large swaths of those
I'm
cities you
sure they have
wouldn't want to
applesauce.
live in.
I'll give the grapes to Sydney.
There
You
are
know,
tent
applesauce.
cities, there are people
And
out
your
and
shit.
using drugs and
Little snack.
overdosing, and there is crime, and there are home invasions. Businesses are fleeing those cities, and once vibrant city centers of places like Portland or San Francisco, although San Francisco is getting a little better now because of AI companies moving in, but once vibrant American cities have become
Okay, now Tim, they've been like
places
that
that
since the
people wouldn't want to
1970s.
live.
dude.
And a lot of
He's
people
talking about the
associate
decline of
that
American
with
downtown, the cities,
Democrats,
and maybe that's what
you
happening
know,
to the kids.
experimenting with
first came to
programs that get
Tulsa,
rid of bail,
downtown was scary, bro.
or
No, it was scary. There was no one
prioritizing
staying. Yeah,
someone's
it's
right
got nothing but
to
better
not
since I got here.
feel
So yeah, for them
like
to act like
they're being,
the
their rights are being
downtown
infringed
cities
on
being
with the
scary
greater
is
good of
something new,
keeping the streets
that
safe.
is not
And
true. Yeah, that's
the
not
worry with
true. I don't know why they're
Mamdani, who I think says a
I
lot of
don't know
good
why
things.
they're trying
The
to
worry
represent
with
that
him
way.
from a lot of people that I talk to
Downtown
is that
is like
he
the meaning of
doesn't,
that.
that his
Yeah, but
policies
it's
are
not.
going
It didn't
to
used to be. You used to take
increase
your kids downtown to watch
crime
shows and go
in New York
shopping.
City, because what he's going
That's
to
what I mean.
do
But
is
since I
instead of,
was a kid,
he's going to take
downtown
money
has
from the
been in
police
decline.
and he's going to
The
fund
center
these,
of the city, the
you know,
urban
people that
center where
are,
all the
you know, he
buildings
wants
and
people
shit
to go
are,
out that are not
that's been
police,
declining
that are
since
not
the
trained in the
19
use of
since I
deadly
was
force,
your
and
age.
maybe they're trained in
That's not
mental
new.
health,
That's what
you
I'm
know, or
saying.
other
For tend to act
schools
like
of
that's
thought,
a new
and
thing
they're
Like
going
it's a
to
new
confront
thing.
is
people.
kind of
All right,
disingenuous.
Yeah.
That's
Mamdani
been
can
going on
speak a
for over
lot better
50
for
years.
himself than I can. I'm supporting him. In
So,
fact,
Yeah.
I'll be back in New
and
York
culture
City
is a prime purpose. Yeah.
Sunday to do a
So,
rally with him. I hope
Yeah.
very
Our
much he wins. I
downtown,
think he has the
you
chance.
barely
Look,
see
between you and me,
anybody.
governing
No one
any
yeah, our
major city
downtown hasn't
today
been the same
is an
in
enormously
50 to
difficult job. You got to
60
be a little bit
Go
crazy
get your
to even
kid.
want to take that job.
Agreed.
All right. But I think this
Okay.
is, I've gotten to know him the last few months. He is a really smart guy. He is very serious. The first time I talked to him, you know, we talked
So you
about
took it for
when
a
I was
little
mayor
while.
of Burlington, Vermont. And he talked about governing.
Coming up with
How do we bring together the
Then
kind
you
of
put in the seasoning. You don't cook the seasoning,
organization,
right?
the kind of
No.
people that we need
So you
to
wait
be
till it's almost done.
to have an effective
Then you add
governance.
the
So I
seasoning.
think some of what some of those folks are
And yeah,
saying,
we leave
I
her
think he
kind
is
of
very
stiff.
cognizant of the crime issue, very cognizant for the homeless
One
issue.
there, one there,
But
one
we are
there.
dealing not only in New York City, but all over this country with very
Yeah,
serious
we need to
problems.
make
You got
coffee.
800,000 people who are homeless,
I'd like some
right? So
coffee.
what do you do? You got a serious drug problem all over this, you know, terrible drug problem. What do you do? Your point, I think, is a very valid point.
Did you hear me
Is
though?
the answer to allow people to be
Uh,
yelling and screaming and shooting
No,
up
just
on
the younger people
downtowns
today
all over
trying
the
to
world?
act
Is that
like
the answer? I don't think
downtown's
so.
being in
Right? Well,
decline
let's
and
talk
full of
about what
crime
the
is a
answer
new
is.
thing.
In terms
Oh,
of the
yeah.
police,
Like
I think what
Biden
some
did that,
people are
and I
saying
was
when we
like,
talk
"What
about
the
police
fuck are
reform,
you?"
police have an
I
enormously
remember in the
important role. When
'70s
I
when
was
like
mayor of
fucking
Burlington,
New
Vermont,
York.
I got
Go back
endorsed
and
for the
watch
first time by
Rocky,
the
dude,
Patrolmen's
and look what
Association Police
downtown
Union. Got
Philadelphia
endorsed
looks
again
like.
and again and again. I work with the police. They are a very important part of any good city.
Central Park.
But there are
Well,
things, for example,
Central Park was
you need to
dangerous as
have a
fuck.
cop.
No one went
If
there after
somebody
night.
overdoses, what's the proper response?
And then yeah,
Is it
Harlem
necessarily
was
a police
still
officer? If
scary as
somebody's having a
fuck. So
mental
yeah, what the
breakdown
fuck
out
are
on
you
the street,
talking about?
you need necessarily a
Like
police
we've
officer.
A
had
lot
this
of people
problem
say
for a
yes
long
because that
time,
person
dude.
poses a
Since
public
the
safety
It
since
threat.
they
depends on the
built the
situation. All right,
interstates,
depends on the
and
situation.
it allows
But
people to drive
what you
into
want
the
to do is
city
make
and
sure
then
you're
drive back
utilizing
out,
your police
and
in the
that's
most
led to the
effective
decline.
way that
That's
they
when the
are trained
families started moving
to
out, and the only
react.
people you left
That's
there
my view. Some
were.
people can disagree on that, but I don't think anybody
But yeah,
that
they're
I know who's
Right.
serious
Rogan,
about
Dylan,
governance
all the
does not
Republicans are
understand that we
trying
have a
to act
serious
like
crime problem and that we've
drug
got to
users
deal
and
with it.
homeless
But
being
let me
downtown
switch
is
gears,
new.
if I might, for a moment,
Absolutely.
Tim.
Like, what the fuck are you
What I want to
talking
do, and
about,
the reason
dude?
I wrote that book is to
So
ask
that's
questions
the erasure
that
of
are
hope.
not
That's what they do.
asked
Yeah, dude.
terribly often
They just keep
uh,
saying
in
things
our
over and
country
over and
among
over
the
till it
ruling
comes true,
class of
bro.
America.
They just keep
And that
saying it
is,
over and over and over.
we are today the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, right?
Yes.
That's what they get paid for.
If we are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, one might assume that we have the best healthcare system in the world. Our kids
And
are
they
getting
keep
the
saying
best
we had the best
education in the
military
world,
ever, and they
that our
can't. We
people are
haven't
living
won a
in great
war
affordable
since
housing,
it's
that our
going on
children are
100
eating nutritious
You
food,
mean we have the best
etc.
assassination teams
But
ever? Is that
nobody
what you're
believes that
trying
is
to
the case
say,
because it's
dude?
not.
But that's not
And the
an
question
army,
we have
bro.
to ask
Army can
ourselves
actually
is,
conquer countries.
why
But
is that happening? And what do we
you
have
mean
to
we have
do
the best
in order
trained,
to
highly
make it happen?
ninjas?
Make it happen.
We've got the
And
best
to my
ninjas
mind,
in the
what you are
history of the
dealing with
fucking
right now
world,
in an
bro. They can
unprecedented
kill
way
you in your fucking
is a
bed
relatively
when you're
small
fucking a
number of
mile underground. These
extraordinarily
motherfuckers.
wealthy,
Okay, but can
mostly
they take
big
a
tech
city?
type
Yeah.
Oh,
guys
they can't hold Kabul?
who not only have an
Excuse me,
unbelievable
Kabul?
amount of wealth, they have
What,
extraordinary
dude?
power,
Baghdad?
and also
Where's your
they
army,
kind of
motherfucker? It
believe
ain't
that
in
they have the
Baghdad.
right to rule,
Greatest
that they have
army
some kind
ever,
of
huh?
divine
Got
right,
chased out by a
and
bunch of
that there
fuckers
should
who
be
shit
very
in dirt
little
holes.
accountability
Whoa.
toward
Yeah,
them.
greatest
And in
army
their power,
ever.
as we discussed
No,
them
see
ago,
this
they
shit?
and
They
other
repeat it.
billionaires
Just keep
have a
saying it,
huge
dude.
impact on the
You
political
fucking
process.
con
So
man.
the
Keep
interesting
fucking
thing to
saying it.
me
Make it
is that people
true.
say, well, Bernie, don't we have a divided divided country? And the answer is
Sorry,
no. We do
too
on
much.
many issues. But you know what?
Too much.
On many other issues, Tim, we do not.
I'm
You go out
coming.
on the street,
Everything's just fucking
you
going
ask people,
on.
is the American healthcare
Sorry.
system working?
And
And people
I'll
look
give
at
me
you
the
and say,
scissors,
you're
girl.
crazy. Of course it's not working.
Right.
We're ready.
Right? Should healthcare be a human right? Should all people have healthcare?
Because this is the greatest
Yes.
lunch you've
Okay.
ever
That's what
had.
most Americans say.
Ever!
Now
Example.
what does he say?
This is the greatest
My
ever
brother
lunch
is,
ever in
7
the
years
history
older
of
than me.
mankind. The
We
greatest!
grew up here in New York City, Brooklyn.
We're lucky.
Back then,
It's the
so we're
greatest!
talking 70 years ago,
What is that?
he went to
What?
college, Brooklyn College, a very good college.
What?
You know how much he paid? How much our family paid for tuition at Brooklyn College?
$1,800.
No, zero.
They were too
Really?
afraid
Yeah.
to go there.
Yeah, well,
And if you go to the
And
during
I'll
that time, you go to
I-
University of California, one of the great public
it's pretty
universities
safe
in the
now, I
world.
think. It's
You know
been
what
safe
tuition
for a
was?
little while.
Zero. State colleges, tuition was zero.
Yeah.
Today, people
No, at
cannot
night,
afford to
you
send
know,
their kids to college.
down there still. Yep.
Every psychologist in the world tells you that 0 through 4 are the most important years
Go.
of development, intellectual and emotional, for
Yeah,
children, right?
Yeah.
How's our child care system doing?
Terrible.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're terrible. We're paying, you want to be a child care worker? Good. We'll pay you $15 an hour with terrible benefits. You're doing some of the most important work in the world. So the
I was gonna
issue
say,
that
it's
we have,
people
you know,
who go down.
education
That's
was
what
a
I'm
study
saying,
came out a
like,
few months ago.
Tulsa downtown
Our
has
kids
been
in America
rebounding
today
for, like,
rank
since I've
something
been
like
here, too.
37th in the world
So,
in science
that
and
freak-
reading
yeah,
and writing.
I remember
I'm shocked it's that
Travis.
high.
I used to take the
I've
kids
spoken to
downtown
some
to
of them.
walk, and that wasn't even at night.
You know, it's
Travis would
pretty
be like,
impressive.
dude, are you
I
sure?
can't say enough good
Taking
things
your
about
kids
Morgan
down
and Morgan Law
there?
Firm. I try, but I can't. I'm
Like,
telling you
damn,
right
dude,
now.
Travis, like,
Morgan and Morgan is America's largest personal
Yeah, there
injury
are
law firm
homeless
with
down there.
1,000 lawyers and 100
There
offices
are.
nationwide.
but, like,
Hiring
I'm
Morgan and
pretty sure
Morgan
the
is like
cops
hiring an
have killed
army
more
that has your
people
back.
downtown than
If you're injured by somebody else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. And here's the truth: not all law firms are the same. Hired the wrong
But
one,
that's why
and
it's
you may
safe.
be
I hate to
beat
be like that,
before
but
you
yeah,
even
those cops
start.
down there, I've heard more
Because
than
when
once.
people
We've
show
heard
up,
fucking homeless people.
whether it's for help, answers, or for justice, they
But
deserve
El
America,
Paso is
somebody
very
who's actually on their side. There are plenty of reasons to hire Morgan and Morgan, America's largest personal
I
injury
think
law
you're
firm.
ready, baby girl.
Did you fall on an icy sidewalk, Morgan and Morgan?
But yeah, just to
Was
act
the
like we
floor in
haven't been
Wendy's
dealing with these
wet?
problems since the
Morgan and
1970s, dude.
Morgan.
This has been my whole
Did the
life.
hair salon cook your
Stagflation,
brain? Morgan and
Nixon, the oil
Morgan.
crisis, the
If
small
you're ever injured,
cars
you can
coming
check out
in,
Morgan and Morgan. Their fee is
apartments,
free unless
everyone
you
moving into
more
fucking
information, go to
apartments.
forthepeople.com/Tim.
That was in the 80s. They built all those
forthepeople.com/Tim.
huge
This is
fucking
paid
apartment
advertising.
complexes. So, yeah.
This podcast
So
is
yeah,
brought
this shit
to
ain't
you
new,
in part by
dude.
Stash.
This
What if you
ain't
could
fucking new.
start investing without ever picking a single stock? With Stash, the experts handle the hard
I saw
part for you.
some.
Stash isn't just another investing app. It's a registered investment advisor that combines automated investing with expert guidance. So you don't have to worry about figuring it out on your own. You can choose some personalized investment or let Stash's award-winning smart portfolio do the work for you. With Stash, investing doesn't feel like gambling. It's simple, smart, stress-free. So your money can finally start working as hard as you do. Get access to world-class financial advice with personalized guidance for just $3 a monthly subscription. Stash has already helped millions of Americans reach their financial goals. Don't let your money sit around. Put it to work with Stash.
No, that's
Go
true
to
though.
get.stash.com/TIM to see how you can receive $25 towards your first stock purchase and to view
I
important
still,
disclosures.
Dave's
That's
confused, dude.
get.stash.com/Tim.
Segment, section, scene. That little scene has become more and more relevant with that teacher. The elementary school teacher, what, 6th grade, 7th grade?
You and him do not share.
They're leaving junior high.
Few.
So it's
Steve
either
Bannon
7th or 8th
has
grade.
suggested
Probably 8th.
seizing
Yeah,
space
so
cells,
they're
deporting
leaving
Elon Musk.
childhood.
Like, here's my question.
And he's trying to
A
tell
lot of
them,
these
like,
oligarchs
man,
are very powerful.
20
Unless
years
we're
from now,
willing
some of
to
you
use some
motherfuckers
type
ain't
of
gonna be
force
here.
and some
Some
type
of
of
you are gonna be
legal
in
means,
jail.
It's
Some
like my source
how
said
in
when we were
God's
going-
Good
name?
question.
Right?
Good. All right.
Let's be. I mean,
I'm not
let's.
going to
telling
seize them.
them,
You know,
and they're
unlike the
kids,
president
and
of
they're
the
all
United States, I've got to
innocent.
believe in the Constitution and the rule of
That
law.
dude's just
Agreed.
like, well,
But
there's always a but.
tell you what.
all right, here's the but.
Yeah.
The but is, and let me be as clear as I
Boys,
can be.
fuck.
Let's get him.
Musk
I'm kidding.
has, I don't know, $400+ billion.
No, dude,
He's
that's
on his way to
the
become
No,
a
truth.
I
trillionaire.
remember
Yeah.
Do I think that is acceptable? No, I don't.
You know,
So I
Yeah,
think we
like,
should
hey,
have at
help
a
us
certain
out.
point
You
the
know,
tax
let us
line
out a
growth.
little
My
early.
own guess is
You're like,
most
dude,
people can make
this
it on
is
$1
just
billion.
the start, bro.
Yeah.
So I think you need,
This is
right
just
now,
the
you have
start of
billionaires
your
paying an
fucking misery.
effective tax rate that is lower than a
Oh,
truck
no.
driver or a nurse.
No
Does that make sense?
exceptions, bro.
To me, it doesn't.
You're fucked.
And I think what we have got to do, which is not only have progressive taxation, that say to these billionaires they can't have
And you need to do
extraordinary amount of wealth.
mouthwash, baby girl.
What
You
we
go
have got to
do
do
some
is a little
mouthwash,
bit harder,
please.
is
Everybody
to
needs to
change the
Listerine.
culture.
Keep
And
that
that is,
bug
I
down,
respect
dude.
people who are innovative,
That
create
bug
new
will kill
businesses. I
you.
really do.
Yeah.
They make money. God bless them. Who
The
cares?
war never
Make money, get rich.
stops
But there is a limit.
against the
I think
bug.
most of these guys get their satisfaction out of creation. They create all this kind of thing. Do they want money? Yeah. But money as an end, really, what does the next $100 billion?
That's all we are, dude.
You're worth
Bugs
200
covered
billion
in
out. Do you
bugs.
really need
You know
another 100
that?
billion?
I'm pretty
Do
sure
the
we
work
are,
that you got to
though,
do.
right?
You know, great
Yes.
people like
We're
Jonas Salk.
little
Remember the polio
organisms.
vaccine? He gave it away.
Right.
The world remembers him as a great hero.
Right, but Jonas Salk was not building an autonomous drone army, and a lot of these guys are like
Drone army.
a lot of them have given up on America.
Good.
They don't care about the nation state. They want to raise tremendous amounts of capital from the government. They want to raid the treasury so they can build a arsenal of weapons
Pretty
for
sure
the
they
Defense
want
Department,
the
maybe
middle-
also
they
for
want
themselves.
family
They're
armies,
all
dude.
building
That's
these
what the
bunkers
monarchies
all
were.
over the
That
world.
wasn't a nation state.
What do they know?
England is
that we
not a
don't know?
nation
Or,
state.
you know, not
England
to sound like a
belongs
conspiracy
to that
theorist, but
family,
this is
dude.
creepy.
You're getting, look,
That's how they
you're
see
getting
it.
into
And I
some
think that's
kind of
how they
creepy
want to go
areas.
back
I
to
don't,
it. Like,
I don't
no,
think you're
this
crazy.
is
I mean, who
not.
the hell knows? But
I
Right.
maybe you're
own
crazy.
this
But,
land.
I don't think so. But
And you might live on it, and we can work something out.
let's
But
go there
I
for a
own
second.
this land.
Right now,
I ride a
I know,
force.
presumably everybody knows,
I
no
think,
great
and I
secret.
want to give it to my family
Musk
and my
and
kids.
Bezos and Ellison
I'm pretty sure
and
that's what
Altman
they
and
want.
others are putting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars into AI and robotics, correct?
Correct.
And you can argue they probably always
Now,
did. They were just fucking
Does
tricking us
anybody
into
really
dying for
believe
them.
that these guys are doing it in order to improve life?
But yeah,
for
until they
the
get
average
rid of that
American?
property
Zero
tax,
people believe
dude.
it.
No, there ain't no.
Statistically.
It's funny
Until
that
you get rid
say
of
that.
property tax,
I
you
was
don't
at
own that
Davenport,
land,
Iowa.
Those
dude.
four guys don't even believe it.
You're leasing
I
it,
was at
dude.
Davenport, Iowa, a couple of months ago.
They can't
There were a
tax
few
you on your
thousand people
land
out
like
in the
that.
rally.
That's
So I said,
bullshit.
I said,
I
well,
can't
just
believe
sit
they
down.
got
Look at
away
all
with
this money.
that, dude.
Raise your hand, thousands of people.
It's got to benefit
Raise
the
your hand
rich
if
somehow.
you think AI
It's a way to get
robotics
the
is going to hurt
hands
the
out of
working
the
class in this country.
property and
In a
land
room
out
with
of the
several
hands of the
thousand
middle
people, 2
class
hands
and
went up.
back up into the hands of the wealthy who
So
can afford to
people
pay the property
understand.
taxes.
Yeah.
And
That's the
what
only
are their
way that
goals? What are they trying to
all
do?
those
This is where
little
it really becomes kind of
1,000-acre
creepy.
little guys who thought they were
In
in
my view, and
Tosca
I
and
don't claim to
Ponca
be the
City,
world's greatest
yeah,
expert.
paying taxes on
But what you're
1,000
going to
acres,
see
dude,
with AI and
for
robotics
100 years.
is the displacement
So it
of
was. It was to
millions and
drive out the
millions
small
of people from
farmers,
the
the
jobs
small
that they have.
ranchers.
You know, I want to see
I'm telling you,
manufacturing
yep.
rebuilt in America. But for a worker, it's not going to mean anything if robots are doing the
Bits of
work.
oil, is that
And we
it?
want to see young people start their own small businesses, etc.
Or at least two.
But it's going to be incredible. We see more concentration of ownership. And when entry-level jobs are going to be done by AI. So you're looking at a revolution,
Mom's
huge
ignoring me. You're all
transformation,
fired up.
economic transformation, cultural transformation of our society. Who is determining what's happening?
Can't
Robots
handle
say it
this.
No.
Can't handle
A
this.
handful of people who are really determining the future
Can't handle
of
it.
the world.
It's because mom
That's scary stuff.
mentally prepared for things.
Well,
Can't
I
handle
want to talk
7, 8, 9.
about for a minute because Trump's main issue
7, 8,
was
9.
immigration. The migration seems to be the biggest
7,
issue
8,
in the
9.
UK election. It was the biggest issue in the US election.
No, 9/11.
It seems to be a massive issue all over the world. And I wanted to talk.
9/11 is an evil meme for
I don't
some
like the
weird
ice
reason.
raids. They're barbaric. I think showing up to a college graduation and
They like to do
deporting
things, but bad guys
somebody
like
who's
to
there to
do
watch
things
his
on
daughter
9/11.
graduate from college or high school, whatever it is
They
inhumane.
think it's cool.
But I will
They
point to an
think it's
article
cool
from 2007 in the Wall Street Journal
to
about
be
the Kroger poultry
9/11.
processing plant in Georgia. And what it was
What?
after
They do. They love that
a
shit. They love
raid,
Friday the
you
13th.
had
That's
the
why you got to be
owners
careful
of
on
that
Friday the 13th
company
because a bunch
were
of
forced to
weirdos
hire
like to do
American
bad
workers. A lot of
things
them were
on
African
Friday the
American workers,
13th.
and then raise wages to around $7 to $9 per
So
hour.
you know how
And this was the direct result of not having a pool
her
of
son was just born on
undocumented
October
labor.
13th.
I think a lot of people
Yeah, I was like,
don't like to see people zip tied in the middle of the street, but they do look at the Biden administration letting in 10 million people, and they're suffering, and their health care doesn't exist or is too expensive, and they're looking at all the people coming in and the justifications for that these are all jobs Americans won't do. The service industry, whether it's manufacturing or landscaping or whatever it is. These jobs, because this is what ever since I've grown up, we've always heard that. These are jobs Americans won't do. Mark Andreessen said recently that the only jobs that won't be replaced by AI are venture capital, which is his job. So my question is there a position that the Democratic Party can take that is obviously anti-people getting dragged out of their houses, but recognizes that citizenship should mean something, that we should have a border, and that, having laws that protect
supposedly
workers,
they say that's when the Templars were rounded up,
and that
but I don't know if
people
that's true. Nobody
employing
knows,
undocumented workers or illegal labor is driving down wages
You guys ready? I'm
for
coming.
Americans.
All right, you've asked a lot of very important questions, good questions. Let's start off with the basic. So long as we have nation states, right, which we have.
Okay, I'm coming. Hold on, I'm
borders,
coming.
Right? If you don't have any borders, then you don't have a nation, right? In a sense. So has historically the United States done well under Democrats and Republicans in protecting the border? The answer is no. Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border, and it ain't that hard to do. Biden didn't do it. Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period. I think most people in the Congress agree with that.
Why don't you think he did it, just out of curiosity?
Pardon me?
Why don't you think Biden was more proactive with securing the border?
He did. He did some things. He was not, I think by the end of his term, if my memory is correct, the number of illegal folks coming in had gone down. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that overall it was a good job. It was not. All right. So that's point number one. You need a border, let's have a border. And we have certainly the technology and the manpower to make that happen. Number two, what happens, what is the appropriate response to, we think there are about 10 million undocumented people in the country today. Less than 3% of our population, okay?
Probably, there are estimates that are higher, but let's say it's 10.
Those are the best estimates I've seen, okay. Why did those, let's be clear, those people act, my father came to this country from Poland, came in legally, they came in illegally, period, okay? It was illegal.
So there's a lot of stigma and misconceptions out there. People need to educate themselves on their options.
I think it helps having people they can relate to, like us, sharing our stories. The more they can see someone who is similar to them, the more they can start to change perceptions and stigma.
Ask your healthcare provider if Descovy is right for you.
Our frames have gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. So we have really beautiful cat eye frames, but I love also our circular frames. Obviously, these frames are a fan favorite, especially for me. I wear these every single day. You can ask my husband. For me, I just kind of like the bigger frame. It makes me feel a bit more like, I don't know, I feel like a fashion editor. I feel like I work in Vogue. The designs of these I love. They're not one story. They tell 5 different stories, and that's why I love it, because it's really made for everyone.
What are most of those people doing right now? Are they?
Oh, working hard.
Good.
None of those people should be faulted for coming here.
Okay.
It should be, we should start faulting people like Steve Wynn, who run a $1 billion hotel on
and exploit them, right?
On illegal labor. And why aren't we enforcing E-Verify? Yeah.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so you got these folks who came to this country the same reason my dad came to this country. He grew up poor in Poland, came for a better life. And that's why they dragged their kids, from Mexico, Guatemala, thousands of miles, to have a better life, to escape the violence and the poverty that they're in. They're here now. The truth of the matter is, and one of the things that I really, really dislike about Trump, and what demagogues always do, is this country, as we've discussed, has enormous problems. And what demagogues always do, instead of trying to deal with why we have those problems, what are the causes of the problem, what are the solutions, you blame a powerless minority. In Europe in the 30s, it was the Jews, it was gypsies. In this country, it was gays, it was blacks forever, you know, and Latinos, always somebody to blame, rather than dealing with the real issue. So anyhow, you got roughly 10 million people in this country, most of whom, by the way, work very hard. And according to a number of studies, the crime rate, you know, Trump goes around, you know, talking about, you know, somebody does, you know, commits a terrible, terrible murder. Trump is talking about, oh, they are lawless, you know, disgusting, subhuman human beings. Look at this crime. Yeah. Truth is that the crime rate in communities of undocumented people is lower than the general average. Do you know that?
Well, the crime rate should almost be none, right? If people are coming into America and they are, you know, coming here for a better life, and they're properly screened, the crime rate should almost be nothing.
Well, it is. It's lower. All I'm saying is this is not like, it's not like that criminals, everyone's a drug addict.
I don't think anyone thinks everyone is a criminal, and I don't think that anyone, but we do have a ton of income inequality, as you've talked about. So assimilating people into this economic structure is difficult. It is inevitable that some people that cannot find work will turn to crime, and I mean that's just inevitable.
But my only point is this: you know, this is not a community that is, you know, prone to large amounts of crime. All right, so what do? You got 10 million people here. Most of them are working hard. Your point, I think, is well taken.
Yeah,
a lot of employers exploit them.
Yeah,
and by the way, often these people are paying Social Security payroll tax, paying Medicare payroll tax, paying other taxes, and they don't get the benefits for what they pay, by the way.
Right.
All right.
But this has always been a Republican issue. Like, this is why I don't understand why the Democratic Party allowed the issue to be kind of demagogued, because even, you know, yourself, you were out there advocating always for workers' rights.
Right.
And, you know, when somebody talked about open borders, you rightly said that, you know, this is something that Koch brothers would love.
That's right.
They were huge proponents of immigration. The Chamber of Commerce, huge proponents of immigration. A lot of, you know, radical libertarians like the Kochs and others, huge proponents of immigration. So when they're bringing all these people in, and whether it's 10 million or more, I mean, there's probably, I mean, I think there are credible estimates are a bit more, but I don't think it's necessarily about the exact number. But why were Americans told at a certain point that they should not consider certain blue-collar jobs worthy of their time? They should take out student loans and you know, go to a 4-year university, and then a lot of those jobs that were, you know, ended up going to people that came into the country illegally, and the employers are paying a lot less money. I think there's a lot of people that feel that these pro-business interests brought in a lot of people to increase the profits of their own companies at the expense of people that saw a lot of their jobs shipped overseas.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. I mean, one of the things, you know, in my view, I mean, for people like the Koch brothers, that was their goal. It was cheap labor, you know. But I think where we are right now, I mean, is you have X number, whatever it is. I think my understanding is about 10 million. What do we do? And the answer is, I think right now, and where Congress has failed, although there have been bipartisan efforts, is obviously comprehensive immigration reform.
Right.
And in my view, a path towards citizenship. And we have failed in that regard. You know, I think that right now, that is the goal that Congress should set upon itself. I think that, you know, that is a terribly important issue that has to be dealt with.
I love Cozy Earth, temperature regulating clothing and bedding, bubble cuddle blankets, sheets, pajamas. Oh my God, it's so comfortable. It's so insane. What role does bedding and pajamas play in making your home feel like a sanctuary? I'll tell you right now, the primary role. It's the only role. You get wrapped up in a cocoon. 100 night sleep trial. Try them out. If you don't love them, return them hassle-free. But trust me, you won't want to. It's got a 10-year warranty. Hello. because once you feel this level of comfort, you'll want it to last a decade. Head to CozyEarth.com. Can I tell a quick story about Cozy Earth?
Prada, 2000 runway.
eBay 2025. Dior from eBay.
Back with the baguette.
Fendi, guaranteed authentic. Let me guess.
eBay.
Same.
Millions of pre-loved finds backed by authenticity guarantee. eBay. Things people love. If you want to see it all, you need a car that can go the distance. The Subaru Forester Hybrid. 581 miles per tank. Love goes the extra mile. The Subaru Forester Hybrid and Crosstrek Hybrid, part of our growing family of Subaru hybrid vehicles.
Yeah. A friend of mine experienced something terrible while in a foreign country. Okay? His family, his wife and his child, were kidnapped by a roving band of bandits, and they were taken. And he was beside himself. They never came back. They never came back. But so comfort is not something that he can easily find, obviously. He keeps replaying the night back in his head. How did they get him? Some people think he set the whole thing up. I don't believe that. I don't want to believe that. Here's the point. He's so comfortable in the cozy earth that it's wild. Some people say it's suspicious, but they don't realize how comfortable Cozy Earth is, because if they knew that, they'd realize that's why he's so relaxed. Head to CozyEarth.com. Use my code Tim for 20% off. That's CozyEarth.com, code Tim. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure to let them know you heard about Cozy Earth right here. Because home isn't just where you live, it's how you feel. Let's go home with Cozy Earth. Ever feel like you're running on empty, staring at your screen, hitting that afternoon crash, and debating another coffee or energy drink you know you'll regret? Enter Neuro Gum and Mints. Neuro's energy and focus gum and mints give you clean, focused energy without the crash, sugar, or sketchy ingredients. It's time to switch to good energy. It's the easiest upgrade I made. I'm telling you, people's wellness and their energy routine, it's all very specific, but everybody I know who's doing these Neuro Energy, Neuro Gum, Neuro Mints, I'm telling you, it's powered by natural green tea caffeine. All the good stuff. No sugar, no aspartame, no crash, vitamin B12, B6. Neuro also offers caffeine-free options for all-day wellness support. Neuro's memory and focus gum are made with American ginseng to support mental clarity minus the jitters. Neuro's sleep and recharge mints offer melatonin and chamomile to help you unwind and rest without pills or sugary gummies. For limited time, you can get 20% off your first order at neurogum.com by using code TIM. That's neurogum.com and use code TIM for 20% off your first order. That's neurogum.com/TIM. You can also find Neuro at CVS and Amazon. You know, listen, I think that most Americans, not everyone, obviously, but most Americans feel that people should live the lives they want to live, as long as they're not infringing upon other people. Where people do get understandably concerned is children. And I think with the trans issue, you only seem to hear from the loudest voices on both sides, by the way. People on the right that believe that that trans people shouldn't exist, and then people on the radical end of the trans movement that believe any questioning of when younger people should be introduced to an idea or when medical intervention is necessary, a lot of people, they regard any question about those things as transphobia or an attack. Most people in America don't want prepubescent children on puberty-blocking hormones, and this is by the polls, right? Because they feel that kids are kids, they're young, they don't quite know what's going on yet, and to make an irreversible medical decision at that age, if you're encouraged to do so, that to a lot of people, feels like an infringement on their rights as parents. And to me, I feel like it's one of the issues that the Democratic Party has seemed to have lost their way on, because it has sucked the oxygen out of a lot of the conversations that you want to have, which are good conversations about a woman's right to choose and gay rights and trans rights and all of these good things that should exist. But when you have this issue about puberty blocking hormones for children, it's such a controversial issue for so many people.
The answer is yes, you're right.
Okay.
But the answer is, and it is important, and I think Democrats and perhaps myself have not done as good a job as we can in dealing with it. What percentage of the population is trans, do you think?
Probably 1%.
Maybe at most.
Yeah.
All right. Today, 60,000 people every single year die because they can't get medical care. 60,000.
Yeah.
All right. Today, we got 800,000 people who are homeless. Today,
Right.
we're dealing with a climate crisis that could wreak havoc over the years on our country. So I think you're right in saying, I think you're right, that the Democrats have allowed the Republicans to exploit those issues by not dealing with them effectively.
Well, they've also just refused to compromise. I mean, these are unpopular issues.
Fair enough.
Biological men and women's sports, it's just an unpopular issue. You know, child sex changes, no one wants this. Very few people, very radical people. And I understand that people have trans children, and I get it. But, you know, this has tremendously hurt the electability of Democrats.
But I think the answer is yes, but the answer also is why are we not talking about some of the issues that I raised earlier? Why are we not talking about the fact that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people?
Because the Republicans are demagoguing this one issue because it was handed to them on a silver platter by Democrats.
Well, all right. All that I'm saying is if this country can do what I live 50 miles, I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. You end up in a hospital in a month in Canada. You know what the bill is when you come out?
A lot of money.
In Canada, a lot of money? No, zero.
Oh, in Canada. Sorry, I thought you meant in Burlington.
Burlington is a lot of money.
It's just a lot of money.
All right, Canada. They spend half as much per capita on healthcare. Stop for a moment and think what it would mean to this country. I'm talking to the people out there. If you get ill, you end up in a hospital, and you don't have to pay anything out of your own pocket. And as a nation, we end up in spending half as much as we're spending now per capita, because the function of our healthcare system is not just to make the insurance companies and the drug companies rich. Do you know what that would do to America? Do you know how many people, 500,000 people a year, go bankrupt because of medically related debt? People don't go into the doctor. They can't afford to pay their copayment.
Right.
All right. It would be transformative. What would it mean to America if we raise the minimum wage to a living wage? We got millions of people. The minimum wage in Washington now, federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. All right. You got millions of people working for starvation wages. All right. What would it mean if we raised the minimum wage to a living wage? What would it mean in this country if you didn't have to pay 40 or 50% of your limited incomes on housing because we built millions of units of low income and affordable housing?
Yeah. Well,
what I'm saying is the Republicans, and I really do dislike this. If people disagree with me on healthcare, fine. Let's debate the issue. Disagree with me on economics, debate the issue. But I really do hate demagoguery where you deflect attention away from the major crises facing large numbers of people. Right now, as you know, we're, I think, in the 20th day of a shutdown. And you know what the issue is? The issue is a very simple one. If Trump and his friends get their way, 15 million people will lose the health care they have today. And according to studies, 50,000 of them will die unnecessarily every year. And if you're on the Affordable Care Act, on average, your premiums will double.
Which is why I think a lot of people, because I agree, but a lot of people with an election with so much at stake were shocked that President Biden was, put out as the candidate with clear cognitive issues. And then without a primary, Kamala Harris, who was relatively unpopular in the Democratic primaries, was then the candidate, and she only had 90 days to sell herself to the American people. And by the way, she did a decent job for having 90 days. But the machinery of the Democratic Party allowed that to happen. And this has nothing to do with you, by the way. You're kind of, even though you're a Democrat, you're outside of that.
I'm an independent.
You're an independent.
You know that. A caucus with the Democrats.
No, for sure. And nobody would hold you responsible for that at all. But the machinery of the modern Democratic Party allows that to happen when and they tell us this election the stakes have never been higher. Democracy is on the ballot. And then they allow this to happen. How does that happen? Why is there such a cover-up with Biden's mental decline? Why is there no primary, a quick one even, after he is judged unfit to run? Why is there no transparency there? That's a huge problem. And I think it delivered I know people blame 5 podcasters, but I think that process helped deliver the country.
Again, let me just say this. I ran against Kamala back in 2020. And know her is not close, but I know her well. And she's an incredibly intelligent, focused person. And I worked as hard as I could. I ran all over the country to try to get her elected. I think the reason that she lost that election gets back to the point we discussed at the beginning of this podcast, and that is money in politics. Kamala did not run a campaign focused on the needs of the working class. Didn't run a campaign focused on healthcare, on economics and raising the minimum wage, on paid family and medical leave, on housing, on all of the issues that working people are struggling with right now. And I think her not focusing on those issues allowed Trump to win, in my view.
Hercules 20-volt brushless power tools have power, durability, and versatility with the universal 20-volt battery system to power every tool. Make the move to Hercules. As good as the best for a whole lot less. Only at Harbor Freight.
Right. What do you think about this ceasefire or this peace deal? Is this this seems like maybe it's unraveling? We don't know.
Well,
I hope it works.
You're right. Let's hope to God.
Yeah,
I pray. Let me say a word on this because I've been involved in this a little bit, as you may know. Hamas is a terrorist organization that committed an atrocity when it attacked Israel and killed 1,200 innocent men, women, and a lot of young people. Took hundreds of hostages. Israel had a right to defend itself, as any country on earth does when you're attacked by anybody, especially a terrorist organization. But what happened for a variety of reasons in Israel, having to do with Israeli politics and Netanyahu, is they didn't just go to war against Hamas, which was appropriate. They went to war against the entire Palestinian people. And 2 years after that attack, you have some 65, in a population, Tim, of 2.2 million, pretty small population. 65,000 people are dead. 160,000 have been injured. That's 10% of the entire population, mostly women, children, and the elderly. 10%. That equivalent in America would be 33 million people killed or wounded. All right. And behind all of that was American money. All right. So to my mind, the first lesson to be learned is never again, and this is true under Biden, we begged Biden, did everything I could to say, Mr. President, stop giving Netanyahu more and more military aid to destroy the Palestinian people. And Trump came in, he continued the same process. Now, thank God, we think a few days ago they've reached a ceasefire. Hostages were released, that's fantastic. Prisoners were released. Let's hope to God it holds, and let's hope that the United States and the international community rebuild Gaza. It's not just the dead and the wounded. That whole area is flattened.
You have Miriam Adelson, who gave Trump a lot of money. You have a lot of mega donors that have given Trump a lot of money. AIPAC's a very powerful lobbying organization that doesn't have to register as a foreign lobby. Should America fundamentally reevaluate its relationship with Israel?
I think the lesson here is that never again should the United States be pouring in huge amounts of money to a country which is not only acting in violation of international law, but in violation of American law. It is in violation of American law to give money to a country which is restricting humanitarian aid, for example. So we have given money to Netanyahu in violation of both international law and American law. In my view, Netanyahu is a war criminal. The people at the head of Hamas are war criminals as well. I hope that is a lesson that we learn as a country.
Well, I mean, you can see right now that this is the biggest tension point in both the Republican and Democratic Party when it pertains to young voters. Young people who can't afford a house are living in a country where they are graduating college and the job market is tough, don't understand why billions and billions of dollars are going to Israel. And by the way, they're also understanding we're now year 3 or 4 of this Ukraine conflict with Putin. And I think a lot of them are struggling to understand why billions and billions of dollars are going to the Ukraine and why Trump is now telling Zelensky, go win all your territory back, instead of trying to force some type of peace.
I don't see the two issues as comparable. I think, as I said, Israel had a right to...
Well, I mean, they're both foreign conflicts that younger people are wondering why their money is going to negotiate a land dispute in northern Ukraine.
I don't call it a land dispute. I think...
Well, it's eventually will end up being some type of exchange of territory or it's a border dispute or something.
I think Putin is a disgusting human being. And by the way, what is not widely perceived or known, you know, to the best of my knowledge, unbelievably, hundreds of thousands of young Russians have died in that war. Do you know
well, so many people have died, and that's why a lot of Americans don't want to be part of it. You know, I mean, we don't want our money going to increase the likelihood that more people are going to die.
I think
a lot of people are making money. You know, Putin's been able to reorganize the economy of his country as a wartime economy. He's been able to evade American sanctions. He's deepened his relationship with China, India, Brazil, the BRICS nations. He's been able to do a lot of things that have probably increased his power base for now, maybe not long term. But is it smart to keep pouring money and military aid into this conflict with America in the state that it's in?
All right. I have talked to ambassadors from a number of countries in Europe, and their fear is that Putin has this idea that he's going to rebuild the Russian Empire and continue to advance. And if he has not stopped at the Ukraine, other Eastern Europe countries will be next.
I think
NATO will be involved, and maybe the United States and our troops as well.
The rebuttal to that would be he can barely win in the Ukraine.
Wow, you finally replied to a text message from 3 weeks ago. You deserve the sweet and tangy reward of a new prickly pear raspberry Whataburger from Whataburger. Thumbs up emoji.
An icicle treat for every small feat. What a burger.
So the idea that he's going to go march through Europe now, I mean, he can't even finish the job there.
All right, anyhow, I think this is a terrible guy who invaded a country that should not have been invaded, and I think it has to be resisted. That's my view.
At what point would you decide that it might be time to pull the plug on American funding for that war? Would you commit American troops to fight Russia over the Ukraine?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Would you give Zelensky long-range missiles capable of hitting Moscow?
No, I don't think you want to do that either.
Okay.
But I think, you don't want to see this terrible war with so many casualties even explode even further. But I think, the United States has got to use all of its influence to tell Putin to end this bloody war. And
you've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. I did too, until I found out that Nutrafol isn't like the rest of them. Nutrafol is a physician-formulated, clinically tested, and dermatologist recommended. It's the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. You can feel great about what you're putting in your body since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF content certified, the gold standard and third-party certification for supplements. A friend of mine, young guy, started taking this, and his hair came back. And he's always like, you can't make fun of me anymore, but he's still a commercial failure in his chosen profession. So that's what we have to do. We have to make fun of him for his lack of success. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off. $10. What are they, nuts? They're giving away the store. $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com. Enter the promo code Tim Dillon. That's NUTRAFOL.com, promo code Tim Dillon, TIMDILLON. How do you think America's relationship with Israel is going to change?
I think it is changing.
Yeah.
I think, as you've indicated, you got certainly in the progressive left community in America, which started off being sympathetic to Israel after they were attacked, that has been completely changed. And I think the point you made, maybe not widely known, is a lot of young Republicans now, younger people, under 40, under 50, no longer want to continue to support a government like Netanyahu. So,
should AIPAC register as a foreign lobby?
AIPAC has played a terrible role. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, honestly. But AIPAC has spread money around all over the place to right-wing Republicans, to liberal Democrats. And they have played a terrible, terrible role in trying to win support for Netanyahu. I think the very good news is their influence is beginning to wane. I don't know if you've noticed it. But even establishment Democrats are saying, well, thank you. Not only don't I want you, I'm going to return your donations.
Sure.
I don't want any part of it. And that is because I think the American people are disgusted with what has gone on in Gaza.
I think I want a few more questions. I think it's so interesting. Again, I think, a lot of what you say is so mainstream, and yet you're portrayed in the media as someone who's on the fringe of American politics. And that this interview doesn't seem to be the case. You're not saying tax people at 90%. Maybe you believe that, but you didn't say it.
Well, I am saying that we shouldn't have people
that have
owning
over
more than $1 billion. I guess within the context of American politics.
Lot of people, I think a lot of people would say $1 billion is fine.
Yep.
I think a lot of people would say $1 billion is fine.
And what I'm saying, by the way, Tim, is, I talk to my European friends and they say, hey, Bernie, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but in Europe, you would not be considered all that radical.
Right, right. No, and in America, maybe even not, but so when you look at the UK, for example, and you look at the issues that they're having around migration, some of these issues are financial, some of them are cultural. Some of these are cultural issues. These are different groups of people learning how to live with each other.
That's right.
And there is this knee-jerk reaction to call everybody a racist that has concerns about culture. And I don't mean, people going like, I don't want to live with Muslims or I don't want to live with obviously there is elements of racism to that. But the United States, when you have large groups of people, whether it's Qatar giving the president a plane, or it's Israel going, we need more money, or it's the governor of Minnesota, Jacob Fry, telling a Somali delegation, like, I'd love to go to Somalia. One of the reasons I think Zoran's doing so well is he goes, I'm not visiting Israel. I'm going to stay in New York.
And he's focusing on the issues facing the people in New
There
York.
are people that believe, and not in a paranoid, racist, crazy way, but that groups of people are using and exploiting not only America, but other successful countries, Western countries, and that they're going in there and they don't care about the laws, rules, customs, culture of the country. They're going in there to suck money out, or they're going in there to establish a power base and dictate. A lot of people are worried about free speech. A lot of people are worried about laws that, are supposed to be protecting Jewish people, but they really are protecting criticism of Israel. There's people that worry about, Islamic groups that are demanding that certain laws be passed that restrict any criticism of Islam. How can we have these conversations where where people aren't having these knee-jerk reactions about racism? How can we say that we do have a civilization that believes in certain things, and that if you come to it, or you come to the UK, come to any country, you have to respect the laws, customs, and culture of that country. You cannot turn that country into something that it fundamentally isn't, right? You can't demand.
Look, if I come into your house, right?
Right.
You invite me to dinner,
yes.
You are my host, right?
Right.
And I respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I
Yeah.
mean, no one forces somebody to come to another country. I think that basic principle is correct.
How do we figure out how, because there's a lot of it, when Zoran says, I want $100 million to deal with legal disputes for undocumented people in New York. There are a lot of Americans and New Yorkers that go, why aren't we spending $100 million and investing it in the Bronx or Brooklyn or areas of, like, it does seem to be some of the empathy that the Democratic Party used to have for citizens not having health care, it does seem to be always directed in the direction of immigration.
Well, Zoran is I'm sure, a Medicare for All advocate as well. And, we've talked about health care in New York City, et cetera. And I think he's going to do a great job in trying to deal with the affordability issue here in the city. But I think we're, as a nation, at a very, very unprecedented moment in that you have a president who wants more and more power unto himself. And I think it's important that we stop him and ICE from these terrible raids of throwing people into vans. And I think that's what Zoran is trying to protect people who have lived in New York City for all over the country. I mean, I see people all over the country for decades. They're working hard. He does not want to see, somebody in a mask pick them up, throw them into a van.
I disagree with those ICE raids. But if we're encouraging people to attack ICE or block ICE vehicles, well, for sure. But if that happens, that is being used as the pretext for these troop deployments in the cities.
What Trump is doing is totally crazy. I mean, he's trying to say that in Portland, Oregon, they are trying to overthrow the United States government.
No, I understand.
Really?
I understand that that's insane. But I do think that Zoran, if he goes to war with Trump on enforcing federal immigration law, will make New York a pretty crazy place to live.
Look, I think his focus and the reason, I think, honestly, he's run a brilliant campaign.
Yeah.
He's a very, very intelligent guy. I think he's focusing on how you can govern in a very difficult circumstance. I think the focus on affordability, how you control housing prices in the city, how you make childcare available to more and more people. You know,
Do you worry that he'll move to the center? There was there's reported that he had a meeting with David Axelrod and the Obama people and stuff like that.
He talks to a lot of people, and I think that's a good thing. No, I got to tell you, I'm a fan of his.
You're a fan. Listen.
I've been really impressed. You know, this is a guy.
What if he's toasting Jamie Dimon in 2 years? What if he's in a ballroom?
I don't think that's going to
Well, this is what happens sometimes. Yeah. And then somebody's in a ballroom with Jamie Dimon, and Zoran's going, Jamie, you know, when I got here, I was a skeptic, but you're my best friend. And then they're on a yacht, and it's going all over New York.
Between you and me, I do not think that that's going to happen. I don't think Alexandra and I will be in New York City next week.
Is she running for president? How about a unity ticket? Marjorie and Cortez. What about that? Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC.
You came up with that idea.
It's actually my idea. It's not a bad idea. All right. Fighting Oligarchy is the book. Fight Oligarchy. Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont, a consistent voice in American politics. There's no one that doesn't respect you, by the way, which is rare to say to a politician. Go out, read this book, including me, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to us. Read this book, and I hope Peter Thiel puts us in prison, in similar parts of the prison.
All right,
so that we can socialize.
Then we can discuss the book. Okay.
Bernie Sanders, thank you so much.
Tim, thanks for having me.
Of course.
How much could you save by switching your car insurance to Allstate? Well, let's say this is you.
Hello.
And this is you with $713.
Woohoo!
Drivers who switch to Allstate save an average of $713.
Don't hurt him, Kev. All dripped up. Got the new iPhone 17 Pro, and Verizon picked up the tab on the best 5G network, baby.
No way.
It's me. Handsome and hilarious.
No way.
Ooh.
No way.
Wait, it was about the iPhone? Come on.
Get the new iPhone 17 Pro and a new iPad and Apple One. All on us. On the best 5G network.
That's real nice.
All right, so let's talk about everything we know about Xbox's next-gen plans and why I'm concerned, especially after a recent statement from Sarah Bond confirmed some of the reports and rumors and theories surrounding how Xbox will tackle next-gen Xbox strategy. One of the first hints we got of next-gen Xbox was in June of 2025 when Xbox released this video talking about how they're partnering with AMD to power the next generation of Xbox. In that video, Sarah Bond straight up confirmed that at Xbox, we're investing in our next generation hardware lineup across console, handheld, PC, cloud, and accessories. I am thrilled to share we've established a strategic multi-year partnership with AMD to co-engineer silicon across a portfolio of devices, including our next generation Xbox consoles, in your living room and in your hands. And then after rumors began to spread that next-gen Xbox hardware plans are not as solid as they used to be after a reliable leaker said as much, Microsoft put out a statement saying that we are actively investing in our future first-party consoles and devices designed, engineered, and built by Xbox. For more details, the community can revisit our agreement announcement with AMD. And then on October 15th, 2025, we saw Sarah Bond go on Good Morning America to confirm that next-generation Xbox is actively in development. She said the following on Good Morning America.
This is where the team is actually designing, prototyping, and testing for the next generation of Xbox.
Oh, so this is the top secret
room. It is top secret.
So Xbox is definitely working on hardware internally, but the question is, what kind of shape and form will that hardware take? Because currently the theory is that Xbox is not pursuing the traditional console model anymore in the way that PlayStation and Nintendo still are. On October 13th, 2025, we began to see reports published on public forums like NeoGAF from insiders such as Kepler L2 that Xbox is pursuing a launch date of 2027 for the next generation Xbox. But beyond that, Microsoft is trying to make their next-gen console more of a console PC hybrid. And as a result of that, from a pure raw power standpoint, it should be, quote, stronger than the PS6, but at the same time, it will also be more expensive because of this larger size and its use of bridge dies and likely a larger RAM capacity compared to the PS6, at least if it wants to work well as a PC console hybrid. Now, at the time, those were just rumors, but Sarah Bond recently provided a statement about plans surrounding next-generation Xbox that all but seemed to lend credence to the report. So right here, we have a video published by news outlet Mashable. There's an interview with Sarah Bond, and when inquired about what plans are for next generation, here's what Sarah Bond had to say.
I don't know what you can tell us about the next-gen console. Any?
Well, I can tell you you're right that the next-gen console is going to be a very premium, very high-end, curated experience. You're starting to see some of the thinking that we have in this handheld, but I don't want to give it all away.
So right there is a really important quote, especially the bit about how we're starting to see some of the thinking that they have in this through the Xbox Ally X handheld. Well, the big marketing push that Xbox is going for right now is that this is an Xbox. Any device that you're using is an Xbox. You can't really obfuscate the fact that the Xbox Ally X is just a handheld PC. It is just a PC with an Xbox logo stitched on top. And while it does feature this front end that has more of like an Xbox interface, at the end of the day, you're still using Windows, which means that all of the issues that come with Windows, which is just such an inappropriate operating system for a gaming handheld and has so much friction, it just makes it a less than ideal gaming dedicated handheld experience. Windows is just a big culprit of that because that operating system.
I'm a content strategist. That means I have a closet full of roles. One moment, I'm an email copywriter. The next, I'm a social media manager.
Wasn't designed for that purpose. So what the ROG Xbox Ally X truly is Xbox's first attempt at trying to meld Windows and Xbox, or trying to create a PC console hybrid, except the Xbox Ally X handheld leans a lot more towards PC. If Xbox Ally X is the model for what next-gen Xbox will look like, then that means that next-gen Xbox will be a PC and have a lot of functionalities, but also come with all of the qualms surrounding Windows, which is currently not very plug-and-play for gaming and wasn't designed for, like a controller experience. The reason why gaming-dedicated consoles like the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5 sell so well and appeal to the masses is because it's super easy to set up. It's easy to just plug in and play. You're right in, and it is designed to make the gaming aspect as seamless as possible. Windows was designed for productivity on top of also being able to run applications like video games. And the thing about gaming consoles is that I feel like generally the masses prefer that a gaming console be dedicated to gaming. They don't want a jack-of-all-trades gaming device. The more tailor-made for gaming it is, the more it serves a single purpose instead of being a device that does everything, the better. Similarly to how when Xbox tried to make their Xbox One both a gaming console and a TV hub, when TV was a big emphasis of Xbox One, that was something that really didn't appeal to a lot of people. They just wanted a good gaming console and something that does that at a reasonable cost and that doesn't have extra frills that drive up the cost for functionalities that not everyone might want to use unless you're super hardcore about that stuff. That's why dedicated consoles sell well. They're very easy to understand. They're meant to be for one thing, and that's gaming, and it does that the best. That's what people want when they buy a gaming console. To really highlight my concerns of turning the next-gen Xbox into a PC instead of a dedicated console, here is a review of the Xbox ROG Ally X that highlights how Windows really gets in the way of being able to make a dedicated gaming device just as seamless and intuitive as possible.
I thought finally Microsoft and Asus was stepping up. Maybe this one was going to be the one that gives Steam Deck a real fight. I was ready to fall in love with it. Instead, I got a reminder of why Windows should never run on a handheld. And I got to tell you, if this is what Windows gaming on handheld is supposed to be, it's an absolute disaster. I imagined a clean Xbox-like experience. Something optimized, modern, smooth. Instead, what I got was a mini Windows laptop that just happens to have joysticks glued to the side of it. It's not innovation. That's just laziness. Windows setup, Microsoft accounts, Wi-Fi, fingerprint registration, and then updates, drivers, BIOS updates. I kid you not, 1 hour before I could even see the desktop. 1 hour updates on a console. That is not gaming. That's onboarding a new laptop. And by the time I was finished, I didn't want to play with this thing anymore. And that's when it hit me. This isn't an Xbox handheld. This is a Windows PC in disguise. That Xbox mode that they brag about, it's not a separate operating system. It's like an app. You can minimize it and see the desktop right behind it. There's no transition. There's no immersion. It's just Windows pretending to be a console. Mind you, Windows on a 7-inch screen. And honestly, using Windows on a 7-inch touchscreen is just painful. Tiny icons, misclicks everywhere. You open settings, it opens Chrome. The entire interface was made for a mouse and not your thumbs. And as someone who works in tech every day of his life, the last thing I want to do when I get home is troubleshoot another computer. And this is why the Steam OS is still the gold standard.
So all those concerns surrounding the Xbox Ally X, minus, the smaller screen and the touch screen elements that aren't associated with kind of a living room console experience, all those concerns I think are very valid for what the next gen Xbox console might be. Ultimately, we're going to have to be dealing with all of the insufferable aspects of Windows, and on top of that, it's going to be more expensive than the PS6, which Xbox cannot afford to do, given that they've lost complete dominance over the gaming and console market space. Then I just don't foresee next-gen Xbox appealing to a wide range of people. I see it appealing to a niche group of hardcore gamers. I see it appealing to folks who like to own the latest and greatest. But when it comes to appealing to the masses and this being the place to game, I just don't foresee that happening with this next-gen Xbox plan, especially because there's a complete lack of exclusives. Why do we get Nintendo consoles? Why do we get PlayStation consoles? Aside from the unique features that they offer, in large part, it's because we can only play certain games on those specific consoles. We can only play Nintendo games on Nintendo consoles. We can only play those PlayStation exclusives on PlayStation and eventually on PC after a year or two. But if you want to play those as early as possible, you got to get a PS5. Xbox has none of that. And now combined with more expensive prices, not just for current gen, but also potentially for next gen compared to the PS6, and friction that Windows may cause in the way that we've seen it cause for the Xbox Ally X. And if you already have a gaming PC, there's no reason to get an Xbox. Whereas if you have a gaming PC, there's still reason to get a Nintendo Switch 2 or a PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 6. There is the potential for this device to disrupt the PC market, but ultimately this idea of shipping a really expensive device that is at its core a PC, this very much just feels like Xbox is giving up on being part of the console race and instead are just opting to go third party and also shipping a PC with an Xbox brand on it. The one potential advantage to the strategy that I can see is that because this Xbox PC hybrid that they're creating is going to have very specific specs, Xbox can make their games with those specific specs in mind. And so maybe they'll be really optimized for this Xbox PC that they're working on that will seemingly be the next-gen console. But I imagine they'll also optimize their games for a wide range of devices, be it gaming PCs with a wide spectrum of specs, and also for PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch 2 when their games launch on those competing platforms, because they've said that's what they're going to do. And so the lack of exclusives especially makes the proposition of a high-end, premium, curated, really expensive next-gen Xbox that's just a PC with an Xbox overlay on it, that prospect and that idea just that much less appealing. And the only way to make that idea appealing is to start by building out a modification of Windows and that operating system where it really feels like the gaming experience. And
no, it's not what I wanted to do.
all right, so let's talk about everything we know. Specific consoles. We can only play Nintendo games on Nintendo consoles. We can only play those PlayStation exclusives on PlayStation and eventually on PC after a year or two.
I didn't mean to click that, bro.
But if you want to play those as early as possible, you got to get a PS5. Xbox has none of that, and now combined with more expensive prices, not just for current gen, but also potentially for next gen compared to the PS6, and friction that Windows may cause in the way that we've seen it cause for the Xbox Ally X. And if you already have a gaming PC, there's no reason to get an Xbox. Whereas if you have a gaming PC, there's still reason to get a Nintendo Switch 2 or a PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 6. There is the potential for this device to disrupt the PC market, but ultimately this idea of shipping a really expensive device that is at its core a PC, this very much just feels like Xbox is giving up on being part of the console race and instead are just opting to go third party and also shipping a PC with an Xbox brand on it. The one potential advantage to the strategy that I can see is that because this Xbox PC hybrid that they're creating is going to have very specific specs, Xbox can make their games with those specific specs in mind. And so maybe they'll be really optimized for this Xbox PC that they're working on that will seemingly be the next-gen console. But I imagine they'll also optimize their games for a wide range of devices, be it gaming PCs with a wide spectrum of specs, and also for PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch 2 when their games launch on those competing platforms, because they've said that's what they're going to do. And so the lack of exclusives especially makes the proposition of a high-end, premium, curated, really expensive next-gen Xbox that's just a PC with an Xbox overlay on it, that prospect and that idea just that much less appealing. And the only way to make that idea appealing is to start by building out a modification of Windows and that operating system where it really feels like the gaming experience and navigating the gaming aspect of that hardware is frictionless and seamless and intuitive, and it doesn't feel like Windows is getting in the way, which it often does. If you can't find exclusives on this console, at the very least, if you make it a really seamless way to play all the games that you own, be it on Steam or through the Microsoft Store and whatever, then maybe it has some kind of fighting chance to make the next-gen Xbox the ideal like gaming PC to get. But it sounds like at the end of the day, it is pretty much going to be a gaming PC that runs on Windows rather than custom Xbox OS. Whereas Nintendo and PlayStation are stripping everything away about their devices and making sure that their hardware is solely dedicated to ensuring that games can run at their best, and most of the resources reserved to running those games, which is why they can ship their consoles for cheaper. They don't have to make it a PC with other functionalities. As long as it does gaming right, that's all they need to care about. And so they don't have to spec up their devices and their hardware as much, allowing them to sell them for cheaper and in turn making them more appealing in the eyes of consumers who, do look at price points. And especially with something like Xbox, when it's, last place in the race, in that position, being daring enough to ship consoles that are more expensive than the rest, I just don't know how that's going to work out. So yeah, these are some of my concerns surrounding next-gen Xbox, and that's on top of all the strategic and business failures on their part that have led to just a lot of goodwill loss for the Xbox brand. I'll be curious to see how this next-gen PC console hybrid will look like, which if Sarah Bond is to be believed, seems to be the plan, and I'm curious to see if they can really nail that out of the gate and really modify Windows enough where this Xbox PC console hybrid experience can be a genuinely great way to game. But that's one man's take, and I'll be curious to see what the future holds. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what you think about this idea of Xbox launching a PC console hybrid as their next-gen Xbox hardware, and where you think the pitfalls are and where you think the benefits are of that. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
Oh man, excuse me. Oh man. Young yo. Yeah.
Go on. Go on. Come on. I blast my mask. Go on. Go on.
Well, no invite to the housewarming, huh, kid?
I knew you'd come anyway.
Yeah, well, that's not important right now. I'll bring you up to speed on the way. Get in.
How long is this gonna take? I got my own shit to worry about.
Would you like to see your brother this week?
Yeah, what can I do?
You just gotta steal a military jet off an amphibious assault ship and use it to destroy a flotilla of spy ships. Nothing big.
Oh man, you shit.
Would I shit you, Carl? There's a boat. All the gear you'll need is on board. I'll keep you briefed as you go.
I ain't coming back from this one, am I?
Yes, you are. Don't be ridiculous. Here, take this earpiece. Trust me, do as I say. You'll be home for a blowjob and a bologna sandwich.
Excuse me. We might be all right without armor. We'll see. Our body armor is half gone. We'll see.
Okay, Carl. The ship is moored in the Easter Basin Naval Base. Sneak in the back without being seen. Once you're on the inside, I cannot help you.
Well, can you help me now?
Well, no. Actually, no.
Okay, you can hide in the dark. You have a silenced pistol, knife. Try not to alert the guards. Those are all up. Okay. Oh yeah, because I'm pissed, dude. Oh my god. I'm a little upset. I killed... Okay, okay. Alright. It's alright. Chill, chill, chill. Chill. If I can still make it out of here. I'm trying to do this being... Number 8. It's not going up, dude. It's not going up, dude. It's not going up, dude. Number 8. It's not going up, dude. It's not going up, dude. It's not moving, dude. It's not moving, dude. It's not fucking moving, bro. It's not. Okay, PC controls, Harrier, Fudgesicle. Okay. GTSA, PC, Harrier, HARRIER, Harrier controls. No, it's not.
I just so enjoyed my time in Europe.
Real respectable.
I like a woman's instincts. I really do.
Our babies still be warriors.
Real man excuse himself. Unbelievable. He pushed me.
Your body's fantastic. You rude bloody bastard.
Jerk off!
And boom! You've blown a hole in something. Sign up today for your ammunition frequent sniper card. Buy 10 guns and your next one is on us.
Eyes your wide, just stop the truck. I got what you need.
Ammunition, we don't need a background check. A wad of American currency, conflict diamonds, or your daughter is in
Best not to mention where you got that, okay?
bullets. Ask our salesman about every sportsman's favorite, the anti-tank missile. You don't need to clean the deer when he's already been minced. The store leading the fight against communism is having a blowout sale.
If the cops ask, you didn't get it here, okay?
The wars are coming, you hear?
Need anti-tank missiles?
Goes faster.
Well, no invite to the housewarming, huh?
Okay, Carl. The ship is moored in the Easter Basin Naval Base. Sneak in the back without being seen. Once you're on the inside, I cannot help you.
Well, can you help me now?
Oh. Okay. All right. It's all right. Fuck me, dude. Ouch. Ouch. That hurt. That hurt. That hurt. That hurt. Just a little bit. Wow. That super hurt. No, no, no. That was good. That was. I'm frustrated, dude. Frustrated and tired and don't want to play anymore.
Very flashy. I ain't backing down. Are you deaf?
Are you? No, I'm fucking tired, dude. What the fuck, man? Yeah, let's pause. Let's turn on podcast, make a cup of coffee. Just let him sit. Let it sit. Let it sit. Let it sit, dude.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's continuing its deadly attacks in Gaza. Despite the U.S.-brokered ceasefire, Al Jazeera is reporting hospitals in Gaza received 13 bodies over the past day that Palestinians say they've seen no real change in their lives since the ceasefire. The Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis is reporting Israel's handed over 30 bodies and remains of slain Palestinians. Hamas has handed over the bodies of 15 Israeli hostages as part of the ceasefire deal. On Wednesday, a funeral was held for 54 unidentified Palestinians returned by Israel. It comes as the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, says the amount of aid currently entering Gaza is a, quote, drop in the ocean of what's urgently needed. Here's Abir Atifa of the World Food Programme.
Since the ceasefire started on the 11th of October, we've now have over 530 trucks into Gaza supporting bakeries, nutrition programs, general food distributions. So far, we've had over 6,700 tons of food. That's enough for close to 500,000 people for 2 weeks. Daily deliveries continue, and they are now averaging around 750 tons. That's much better than what we had before the ceasefire, but it's still well below our target, which is around 2,000 tons every day.
The Palestinian Prisoners Society says Israeli forces have detained 45 people, including a child, in raids since last night in the occupied West Bank. The group describes Israeli forces have vandalized homes and repeatedly assaulted detainees and their relatives. It comes as the UN Human Rights Office in the occupied Palestinian territory is warning about an alarming rise in Israeli settler violence against Palestinians as the olive harvest season gets underway. So far this year, there were over 750 Israeli settler attacks on Palestinians, which is a 13% increase from last year. On Tuesday, a panel of judges from the Philadelphia-based Third Circuit Court of Appeals appeared skeptical of the Trump administration's attempt to rearrest and deport Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil. The Columbia University graduate was the first pro-Palestinian campus protester to be jailed by the Trump administration over his advocacy work. Khalil's lawyers have filed appeals to prevent the Trump administration from detaining him again. Yesterday, Khalil spoke to supporters outside the federal court.
Trying to stay legal, bro. Legal as I can. Do not engage in that algorithm.
Actually, just like a test for everyone's rights here across the country.
The federal government shutdown has entered its 22nd day. Earlier this week, the federal judiciary ran out of funding to support the work of nearly 30,000 staffers and 94 district courts. Some of these courts are furloughing staff for the first time in 30 years. It comes as several states are warning they'll be forced to suspend supplemental nutrition assistance program, that's SNAP benefits, by November 1st if the shutdown continues, impacting an estimated 42 million people nationwide. Meanwhile, at a White House Rose Garden lunch for Republican senators yesterday, President Trump unveiled a new nickname for Russ Vought, the White House budget chief, who's been spearheading cuts to programs nationwide amidst the shutdown.
And I will say this, that we have Darth Vader. You know Darth Vader, right? Darth Vader is a man who, I think he's sitting right. Is that Darth? Stand up, please, Darth Vader. Stand up. Does everybody know? They call him Darth Vader. I call him a fine man. But he's cutting Democrat priorities, and they're never going to get him back.
A January 6th rioter who was pardoned by President Trump has been rearrested for allegedly threatening to assassinate House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. Christopher Moynihan reportedly sent text to an unidentified recipient, including, quote, Hakeem Jeffries makes a speech in a few days in NYC. I cannot allow this terrorist to live. And, quote, I will kill him for the future, unquote. Moynihan is among the 1,500 people who participated in the January 6 riots, who were later granted clemency by Trump when he returned to office. In a highly unusual move, President Trump's demanding the Justice Department pay him about $230 million in compensation for the federal probes against him. Many of the senior DOJ officials who would be needed to approve such a payout previously worked for Trump, including the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, his former private attorney. The White House said they would, quote, follow the guidance of career ethics officials. But Attorney General Pam Bondi fired the agency's top ethics advisor in July. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays is suing Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson for refusing to swear in Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva. In the filing, Mays wrote, quote, constitutional rights cannot be used as a bargaining chip, unquote. Mays is asking the court to force Speaker Johnson to swear in Grijalva or designate someone else to do it. By refusing to seat her, Speaker Johnson is depriving 813,000 residents living in Arizona's 7th District of congressional representation. Grijalva says she believes Speaker Johnson's refusing to swear her in to Congress because she would be the final vote on a discharge petition to release the Epstein files. We'll have more on that after headlines. President Trump's nominee to lead the Office of Special Counsel, Paul Ingrassia, withdrew from consideration Tuesday following widespread backlash over a slew of racist and anti-Semitic texts. Ingrassia texted a group of Republicans that he has a, quote, Nazi streak, adding that the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday should be, quote, tossed into the 7th circle of hell, unquote. After the texts were made public by Politico Monday, several Republican senators say they would not support his nomination, including Senate Majority Leader John Thune. As immigration raids ramp up across the country, ICE agents in Los Angeles shot and wounded 2 people in a botched operation Tuesday. The agents reportedly shot an immigrant from Mexico they were attempting to arrest. A bullet then ricocheted and wounded a U.S. Marshal. The person ICE targeted has been identified as Carlitos Ricardo Parias, who is a popular TikTok streamer with over 100,000 followers and often documents ICE raids. He now faces criminal charges. Here in New York, dozens of federal agents, many of them with face coverings, flooded lower Manhattan Tuesday afternoon as they targeted immigrant street vendors, most of them from Africa. As news spread of the raid, several people took to the streets in protest. An expose by the Washington Post has revealed Secretary of State Marco Rubio agreed to return 9 leaders of the MS-13 gang in U.S. custody to El Salvador in exchange for President Nayib Bukele's government to allow the U.S. deport and detain hundreds of immigrants at the Secot mega prison complex. Some of the people Rubio promised to return were U.S. government informants who were under the protection of the Justice Department. Bukele's request came amidst mounting reports of secret deals between his government and MS-13. UN experts say U.S. strikes against Venezuela in international waters amount to extrajudicial executions. It comes amidst new reporting that the CIA has played a central role in collecting and sharing the bulk of the intelligence used by the Trump administration to carry out its deadly extrajudicial military strikes in the Caribbean. That's according to reports from The Guardian, which spoke to sources close to the operations who said the CIA is providing real-time information collected by satellites and signal intercepts to target boats they believe are carrying drugs. CIA agents then make the recommendation to strike the vessels with missiles. The U.S. has blown up at least 7 boats in the region, killing over 24 people, without providing evidence that the vessels are in fact used for drug trafficking. Meanwhile, President Trump's continued his attacks on Colombia and Venezuela. This is Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Petrina.
Colombia must know it can count on the Bolivarian National Armed Forces. The people of Colombia must know that they have on their side moral and physical support and deployment of our force in our territory to defend against all threats that loom over the border.
Russian airstrikes killed 7 people, including 2 children in Ukraine today. It comes as President Trump announced his upcoming summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Budapest has been canceled, telling reporters he did not want to, quote, have a wasted meeting. Both Trump and European leaders are calling on Russia to accept a ceasefire along the current front lines. So far, the Kremlin has rejected those calls. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says it isn't surprising Russia's refused to negotiate.
Instead, Russia is once again doing anything to avoid diplomacy. And as soon as the question of long-range weapons for Ukraine moved away, Russia almost automatically became less interested in diplomacy.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy turned himself in to prison authorities on Tuesday to begin serving a 5-year sentence. Last month, he was found guilty of criminal conspiracy for illegally receiving millions of euros from the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi to fund his 2007 campaign. Sarkozy is the first former French head of state in the modern era to be convicted of a crime. In Colombia, an appeals court has overturned the conviction.
Jesus, it takes forever, dude, to change weapon. It takes forever to change weapon, bro. It just takes forever to change weapon, dude.
Imprisoned members of paramilitary groups to retract damaging testimony exposing
It just takes forever to change the weapon, that's all.
Paramilitary groups. Uribe ruled Colombia from 2002 to 2010, during which time there were thousands of extrajudicial killings of civilians who were then purposely mislabeled as rebel fighters in what became known as the false positive scandal. We'll talk more about this later in the broadcast. And indigenous leaders from across Latin America have embarked on a flotilla from the banks of the Napo River in Coca, Ecuador, as they sail to Belém, Brazil, for the UN Climate Summit set to begin next month. Members of the Yakumama Amazon Flotilla are demanding an end to fossil fuels, protections for indigenous territories and ecosystems from oil, mining, and industrial agriculture, and a ban on fossil fuel extraction in the Amazon rainforest. Democracy Now! Will be in Belém, broadcasting from the COP30. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.
Dear brothers and sisters, in our catechesis on the Jubilee theme of Jesus Christ, our hope, today we will consider the transformative power of the resurrection. In our society, sadness and desperation are overwhelming countless individuals who struggle to find meaning in their lives. On the way to Emmaus, we see that the disciples were also disheartened, for they had just witnessed the apparent destruction of their hope. After breaking bread with them, the Lord disappeared from their sight. Yet their souls were inundated with an unexpected and joyful realization. Christ is truly risen. The Lord wishes to do the same for us by dispelling any sadness and desperation that we may be feeling. Let us contemplate, therefore, the glorious wounds of Jesus that attest to his merciful love for us, and allow ourselves to be renewed by the joy of the resurrection. I extend a warm welcome to the English-speaking pilgrims and visitors taking part in today's audience, especially those coming from England, Scotland, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, Burundi, Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Australia, Bahrain, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Pakistan, the Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, Antigua and Barbuda, Canada, and the United States of America. In particular, I greet and thank the group, Friends of the Holy Father from Great Britain, who donated the portable studio for the use of Vatican News services. It's my hope that the Jubilee will continue to be for all of you a season of spiritual renewal and growth in the glorious gospel. Upon you and your family, I gladly invoke God's blessings of wisdom, strength, and...
Did you hear that?
That's a bunch of bullshit. Ignore them. They shooting you as an international incident. You're not a British tank. You should be fine.
For real?
Yeah, probably. Now make your way to the flotilla and sink the fuckers.
Aside from Hannibal, King Mithridates VI of Pontus was the most daunting opponent that the Roman Republic ever faced. This Near Eastern monarch claimed descent from both Cyrus the Great and Alexander the Great, and maintained that he was prophesied to unite the Hellenic world with the eastern kingdoms of Persia, expelling what he viewed as the barbaric Romans in the process. His court propaganda presented him as a messianic figure who the gods would use to drive out the meddlesome Romans, and he frequently touted supposed signs and miracles that indicated the presence of divine favor. One of the most miraculous was the appearance of a fantastic and irregularly shaped comet that illuminated the night sky for 70 days when he was born in 135 BCE. Yet even more prodigious was the appearance of another remarkable and abnormal comet in 119 BCE on his ascension to the throne, also set to brighten the entire sky for 70 days. The utility of these comets for a would-be Eastern liberator is made apparent by differing attitudes toward comets as divine omens. The Romans regarded them as presaging the onset of war and destruction, while Near Eastern cultures saw comets as the harbinger of a great leader. One may recall that about 100 years later, another child born in fulfillment of prophecies was said to have been born under a prodigious star in the Palestinian town of Bethlehem. Ancient sources from Rome and Pontus alike readily acknowledged the reality of both of Mithridates' comets, and their centrality to the king's propaganda indicates that they were a core tenet of his messaging. But thousands of years later, historians at the dawn of the modern era began to doubt the tale of these two fantastic comets. After all, it seemed too perfectly aligned with Mithridates' propaganda aims, and simply too implausible for the rational attitudes that prevailed among scholars in the latter half of the 19th century. To these learned men, the episode reeked of ancient mysticism and irrationality that had to be called into doubt by recent scientific advancements and a growing scholarly disposition to discount any stories that took divine intervention or miraculous occurrences at face value. So these comets were relegated to the status of myth, and historians felt comfortable stating with absolute certainty that they were fabrications of Mithridates' propagandists. But years later, a strange thing happened. When the ancient astrological records of Han China became available to Western scholars, it was noted that the Chinese had recorded two fabulously bright comets with irregular tails shaped like war banners that illuminated the night sky in 135 and 119, replicating the accounts of Roman and Near Eastern sources. Mithridates' comets had been real all along. The ancients may have erred in attributing them to divine providence, but the actual comets themselves certainly existed and were seen the world over. Scholars had drastically overstepped when they used increasing scientific knowledge to redefine rationality and eliminate any elements of the ancient past which seemed too implausible. This anecdote is illuminating, and while it should not be used to call all historical scholarship into question, it can serve as a warning against treating ancient sources with undue skepticism, even in areas where the sources speak of inexplicable occurrences which can only be explained as evidence of divine intervention. Unusual things do happen, and while they don't happen as often as usual things, it's the rarity of these unusual occurrences which causes them to be remembered, and might even lead ancients to begin telling a story about that event that is slowly embellished to become something else entirely. This brings us to the central question of this video. Was Romulus a complete fabrication, or is there a historic kernel of truth at the root of the legend? The two primary arguments made against the historicity of Romulus are that the received narratives are contradictory accounts littered with mythic elements, and also that human settlement in Rome far predates the
on-ramp is
753
that far down.
BCE date when he was said to have founded the city. We'll deal with
You
each
get
of
on
these in
here,
turn to build a
and then
case
you'd have to
not
go,
for the actual
Jesus, bro.
verifiable
Oh, yeah,
existence
you have to
of the
cross
historical Romulus,
Hopefully
but
you can
rather
cross
to
right on
punch
here.
holes in the prevailing reasons for
That's underneath.
skepticism, and to show that it's plausible
Mhm.
that a figure who inspired later legends
Maybe
could have
dirt road?
actually
I
existed.
don't.
One of the most significant
Below,
hurdles
that's
to
below.
accepting the potential historicity of Romulus is the fact that the narratives we possess today are not just contradictory, they're chock full of miraculous instances that make them unpalatable to the modern reader seeking a verifiable historical account. From his supposed divine parentage to being nursed by a wolf, much of the Romulus story seems implausible at best. But the presence of mythic elements is not enough to discount the entire story. Our first written accounts of Romulus don't appear until the mid-4th century BCE, while the best sources don't arrive until the Imperial era, hundreds of years after the events described. Given this distance, and the fact that roughly 60 competing traditions involving Romulus and the foundations of Rome exist, it's not surprising that some embellishment has occurred. Another mark against the theory that the entire story is fictitious is that Romulus regularly engages
No, it
in
goes
behavior
under.
that
No,
fell
it's
well
tricky.
short
How
of
the
Roman
fuck am
ideals,
I supposed to get
notably the
up
murder of his
there,
brother
dude?
Remus and the abduction of the Sabine women. The
Fucking,
Romulus
yeah.
narrative also presents early Rome
Is that what you're trying
as
to
being
say?
populated by runaway slaves
Don't get many
and
people up
debtors.
here?
Hardly an illustrious lineage that future mythmakers would include unless there was some element of truth
Hey,
to
beautiful
it.
girl.
Counterintuitively, the sheer number of
Give me 1
legends that
second. I'll
surround
get you some
Romulus
food.
can
I'm trying to
actually be
unlock a
read as
maze
evidence
here
that
that
there
I,
is something
whoa, have
true
played
at the root of
before,
the
and
tale.
it's,
Though the heroes of these tales have different names, they're
uh-huh.
remarkably similar.
I'm
The
trying
main
to take
celebrated
this
is the
girl to
key
get something
founder,
to eat, but
remembered
it's a
according
little
to different
tricky to
traditions,
get.
with a range of names,
But
including Romos, Romus,
it's a little tricky to
Romulus,
get, I think.
and Romulus, with
And
most
up
of these tales
here,
contending he established the city sometime between 800
hey, baby
and
girl, I'm
750
coming.
BCE. Furthermore,
There, I think.
skepticism about
Yeah.
the tales is not a new
Whoa,
phenomenon.
whoa, okay.
The Romans
Now, where
themselves
does this
seemed to
road come
inherit
from? How
certain
come I can't get
aspects
on
of the
that road?
legends
Yeah.
and preserved only
Okay,
the
there it
stories
is.
that they found most
The
compelling.
diner's all the way up
One
here on the
famous
other side of the
example
road.
of
All right.
applying rationalism to Rome's
Yeah, that's
foundation
just a little
is the
tricky,
myth
dude.
theory that Romulus and Remus could have been suckled by a prostitute instead of a she-wolf, as the Latin
Come
term
on, van.
lupa
Thank
is
you.
slang
See how
for a
that
woman
man was keeping
engaged in
perfect
the
speed
world's
with me? That
oldest
happens in
profession.
real life for some reason,
Romans
too.
had the ability to be rational about their
People
own
will be in
myths,
the next
and
lane
would
to
have
you, and
only
somehow they'll
preserved the
match your
traditions which
speed
seemed the most
when you're
plausible,
trying to pass
and they
them,
were
or
just
even
as
when you're trying to
willing to
slow
write
down. Sometimes it's
fantastic
worse
elements
when
out
you're
of
trying
the
to let them
story
out in front
as
of
they
you.
were to write them in.
Yeah.
In addition, it's worth remembering that many archaeological sites that were
Let me get this
purportedly
girl home.
connected with Romulus were visible within the city and could be visited by any Roman curious about the city's past. From the archaic hut of Romulus on the Palatine to the mysterious black stone in the Forum, the city was full of artifacts that
Let's look at
boasted
the
a
map.
connection to the heroic founder.
Okay,
Romans had a
because you'd have
wide
to go,
range
what
of
the
beliefs about the
frickety
gods and
frack,
their role
dude?
in
This
human
road is,
affairs.
okay.
But even the most skeptical never seemed to
It's
have
all
doubted the
above, it's
actual
all
existence of
above.
Romulus himself, despite
And then,
reservations they may have had about
so
certain
it's
aspects of the
above
story.
here, with this one's
Overt
above.
skepticism about Romulus is a modern
This one's
phenomenon.
above, but
The
this one's
second primary
above.
rationale for doubting the existence of Romulus is
Well,
that
I'd have to go all the way
archaeology
down
clearly
here.
shows that the hills along the Tiber,
How's this
which would
road
one day
above,
become
and
Rome, were
these
settled well
roads are
before
above,
the age
so
of
just really
Romulus.
hard. Okay.
There's evidence of
So
human
yeah, I have to go
habitation dating
here.
back to
Let's just go
approximately
cross country, bro.
1600
I got
BC,
time for all this.
over
Wow.
800 years before
That's
Romulus.
okay. You got
But
time
while
for
this
all this, dude.
appears to shut the door on Romulus being the founder
You
of
got
Rome,
time for all
it
this.
actually
You
presents
got
an
time for the
opportunity
role
to
play.
examine what the
And make it
ancients really
impossible to
meant
role play
in
it, baby
saying that
girl. Sorry.
Romulus founded
Yeah.
Rome.
Gotta
In
play
a
it like
world
a
where the
game,
gods
or something.
permeated
Yeah.
every aspect
We're
of
going cross
reality,
country. That's the role
founding a
play.
new city and
Yeah.
creating a new
We're out in the
community
country,
is
girl.
just as much a
We
religious
make our own
activity
roads
as it
out
is a
here, girl.
physical one.
Yeah.
If
And we just
Romulus
got to.
was a
Sometimes you just
historical
got to.
figure, then
Yeah.
the foundation
Gotta
seemed
make your
more
own
religious
road.
ones. He
Yeah.
was the first to
Yeehaw!
confirm a community's new relationship with its patron deities.
All right, let me get this
Not
girl
the
home
first man to
from,
build a house on the Palatine.
our date.
This runs counter to how we moderns think about what it means to
Okay, where
create
am I? Oh,
something.
wait, I'm still
But the
lost. Hold on,
definition
I'm
does
playing
fit
the map.
comfortably
Okay,
within the
no, I'm not.
milieu of the ancient past.
But I was lost. I
Even the
got
gods of
nervous.
ancient myth did not create from nothing.
I don't know why the
Deities of
icons aren't
cultures
really
as
showing.
disparate as Greece, Babylon,
I'm almost
and Japan,
got her home.
and many others were all said to have created when they brought order to chaos. Refining existing
All right, let's
material
get you some grip
into a
juice.
neatly
Here.
ordered world that was fit
All right,
for
that
humans
last.
and other
Okay,
creatures.
come on.
Similarly, we can view Romulus's activity of creating a new community that would observe human rights and have obligations to specific patron deities as an act which brought these once separate communities out of
You gonna play with your
disorder
cousins?
and into a
Hey, over
newly
here.
sanctioned relationship with the
Over
divine.
here.
By these arcane rituals, the ancients would have believed that Romulus founded a new city, even though people had lived there for hundreds of years. This isn't how it always happened, of course. Sometimes a ruler like Alexander the Great, with a knack for urban planning, would create a new city where there had once been nothing.
Or
But this
you're
type
both
of founding
for.
would have also involved ritual and sacrifice to the new city's patron
You gotta
deities
go potty,
that
girl.
confirmed the new community's
All right, come on,
status.
get.
For
Can't
further
watch
support of
Daddy
the
play.
idea that existing settlement was no barrier to the founding of a new city, we need look no further than the capital of the Eastern Roman
And
Empire,
Daddy will
a city
finish
founded
this
by
up. Hold on,
Constantine
let
the
me
Great
save.
1,000 years after
Daddy will
Romulus,
start
which officially bore
breakfast.
the title of Nova Roma, or New Rome, but is today known to us as Constantinople. Constantine founded his grand Christian capital on the site of an already existing Greek city named Byzantium. Though a community already existed here, no one would dispute that Constantine founded Constantinople, much less the existence of Constantine, even though the narrative of his life in ancient sources also contains many miraculous occurrences said to be the work of supernatural forces, such as the divine apparition of the cross before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge.
Good morning, Joseph
The analogy
Michael.
shouldn't be taken too far. It's not a perfect one-to-one comparison, but it is a useful tool for our purposes here, as we think about how the ancients would have thought. Another key piece of evidence backing the historicity of a Romulus-like figure is the spate of construction that archaeologists have dated to between 800 to 700 BCE that seems to indicate growing centralization of power in Proto-Rome.
I'm
During this
taking
critical
her
time
to
period, unique votive
her
artifacts
cousin's
had been
house today.
uncovered, and a wall
And
around
we'll,
the Palatine was constructed that could possibly mark the original pomerium.
mm-hmm.
But most intriguing is a regal house on the Palatine, which surpasses all of the other dwellings of the time period, and could indicate the
So we gotta
emergence
wait for you
of
to
a
work
king-like
out, and then
figure.
we'll make a
If
little
this is the
breakfast.
case, then whatever his name
I'm
was,
gonna get her
this may well have been the inspiration for Romulus. As we conclude, I want to emphasize that holding to a historical Romulus is a minority position among scholars today. But the goal of this video is not to sell you on his literal existence. Instead, we want to encourage you to think about how you evaluate evidence from the ancient world. Ultimately, there's very little concrete proof either for or against the existence of Romulus. So while agnosticism is probably the most historically rigorous approach, I can't help but yield a little to the romantic notion that the stories Romans told themselves about themselves had a grain of truth at their center. In 2020, a tomb was unexpectedly uncovered under the Roman Forum beneath an area once known as the Comitium, and later built over by Caesar's Senate House, the Curia Julia. Archaeologists unearthed an underground temple featuring an altar believed to be dedicated to Romulus that dated to the 6th century BCE. Inside the temple was a massive stone sarcophagus, but unfortunately, this tomb was empty and no body was found. Had Romulus ever been interred here, archaeologists just barely missed out on what could have been the biggest find since King Tutankhamun. So while new archaeological breakthroughs are still being made in Rome, Romulus himself remains just as elusive as ever. But before we render a definitive verdict on his historicity, we should remember that there are always discoveries to be made in the Eternal City.
Hi, Gaius here. Thanks for being part of our efforts to shed light on the more obscure topics related to the fascinating world of the ancient Romans.
It's gonna get
If you
more and more
enjoyed
max
Titus's work
headroom,
here,
dude. More
please
and
do us a
more where
favor
we
by
can't
liking
tell
and
the difference
subscribing.
between, yeah.
Gratias vobis
So
agro.
that's a lot of fake. I'm just saying, one apartment, 49 million fake people. Yep. 49 million fake people, one little apartment. Huh.
During the celebration of the feast of St. John Paul II at the general audience, Pope Leo XIV remembered the late Pope while greeting the Polish-speaking group, highlighting his legacy and the importance of his call.
Strange, no?
Oggi si celebra la memoria liturgica di San Giovanni Paolo II. Esattamente 47 anni fa, in questa piazza, egli ha esortato il mondo ad aprirsi a Cristo. Questo appello è valido ancora oggi. Tutti siamo chiamati a farlo nostro. Vi benedico di cuore.
Earlier, during the weekly catechist, Pope Leo XIV recalled how even in difficult moments, hope is key in the life of a Christian.
La gioia in attesa dei discepoli di Emmaus ci sia di dolce monito quando il cammino si fa duro. È il risorto che cambia radicalmente la prospettiva, infondendo la speranza che riempie il vuoto della tristezza.
He also reminded the faithful that the month of October is a time to actively take part in the mission that every Christian is called to, evangelization.
Con la forza della preghiera, con le potenzialità della vita coniugale e con le fresche energie della giovinezza, sappiate essere missionari del Vangelo, offrendo il vostro concreto sostegno a quanti dedicano l'esistenza alla evangelizzazione dei popoli.
With his words, Pope Leo XIV invited everyone to keep hope alive and to move forward in daily life, remembering the example of St. John Paul II.
I tried, but then whenever it restarts, the Bluetooth's on and it reconnects. Yeah.
If you've got more than one vehicle insured and have 0 DUIs in the last 5
I didn't ask for Bluetooth to be on.
2 centurions to go into the boat before him, besides Philip, one of his freedmen, and a servant named Scythes. And, while Achilles was already stretching out his hand to him from the boat, turned towards his wife and son, and repeated the verses of Sophocles. Whatever man upon a tyrant takes his way, his slave he is, even though a freeman, when he goes. After these last words to his friend, he went into the boat, and, since it was a long distance from the trireme to the land, and none of his companions in the boat had any friendly word for him, turning his eyes upon Septimius, he said, "Surely I am not mistaken, and you are an old comrade of mine." Septimius nodded merely, without saying anything to him or showing any friendliness. So then, as there was profound silence again, Pompey took a little roll containing a speech written by him in Greek.
You know, as growing up, I was learning all the guitar solos like Kid Charlemagne or that solo from Brother to Brother by Gino Vanelli, things that I've played on my channel before. But nothing really impressed my dad when I play along with it. Anything, if I played along with Brian May or Peter Frampton. And then he gives me this Joe Pass record, and he's like, well, if you could play something like this, then you've accomplished something with your life. So I listened to this record, and I found this one spot on the last song on there. The song is You. And I thought, this is smoking. Let me play it for you. Check this out. If I can learn that, that is going to impress my dad. So I sat down. I didn't know any of these chords even, but I knew I could figure out the single note stuff because I'd figured out some really hard guitar things. If you go back to that brother to brother Gino Vanelli thing with Carlos Rios playing, that stuff is incredibly hard. This, I don't know any of these chords. So I start out, I don't even know what that chord is, but I figured it out. And it's weird. I mean, look at that weird bar there. But then you get into these things. So that stuff there, I could figure out. And then this. That stuff I could figure out. And then these things here, those are just inversions of it. I had heard Joe play that on the record. This is the last song on there. I listened to it a bunch of times, and I started hearing there's... I heard licks like that all over this, so I knew that that was... And then... These licks here... He plays a lot of ideas like that. That's basically a C9 chord in the top notes of it. So all these are just inversions of the same chord. So if I could play that, then it's just figuring out the single notes, okay? So... Okay, so if you just take this first part here, when he goes... So this intro part is tricky to play. It's actually the hardest part of the thing. This, and then this part. The first single note line I think starts right here because of this. He's already on that note. It's hard to play. He could have played it like this. Ooh, that's hard. Maybe he's playing it like that. That sounds more realistic. you want to learn how to play all these kind of lines, the chords, the arpeggios like this, you should check out my Beato book, check out my new scale matrix course, and my arpeggio course. Between those three, all that stuff is in there. And then obviously my ear training program to be able to figure out what all these chords are and how to learn these things by ear. That lick here could actually be played here. Could actually be played here. So where is he playing it? To me, it sounds like here. I think it could be here, though. That's it. Actually, lays really right. This is the hard part. Then this part. Then you get into the chords here. So check this out. Okay, let's just get up to the chords. This part, so getting out of the single note lines. Then he goes into this chord sequence. Same shape. Then he does a slide. And then the ending like. Last chord. So how do you know how to play that? I mean, this could be... Well, he's definitely not playing that because he's... You can tell he's on the inner strings there, so... That's really tricky, getting into the chords. So I finally put that all together, and I played it for my dad when he came home from work, and he was like, pretty good. And that pretty good from my dad, who couldn't, never reacted to anything, was like, oh my God, I can't believe you figured it out, in my dad's own way. That really fueled my, wanting to learn this stuff, not only because it was amazing to play, but to get his approval on it was really amazing. Really was. Both my parents were so supportive. My mom was supportive all the time. She always told me I was great doing anything, even though I was the worst student in the world. But my dad, for some reason, he loved bebop. He loved the most complex music and didn't play an instrument at all. I was just like, my brother John and I still talk about, why did Dad like bebop? Oscar Peterson, Joe Pass, all these players like this that played this super sophisticated music, why did he like it? I still don't know. My dad was born in 1919. My dad passed away in 2004. I guess I just took it for granted. That's what the kind of music Dad likes. But now in retrospect, after having my own kids, I'm just like, why did he like that music? It's amazing. He had great taste in music. But love to know your thoughts. Leave a comment. Thanks for watching.
Estendo il mio saluto agli altri pellegrini presenti, in particolare alla Hermandad del Señor de los Milagros, che ha celebrato la tradizionale processione.
Peter wasn't born a saint. He was a fisherman, tough, outspoken, and impulsive. When Jesus first met him, he called out, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." From that moment, Peter's life changed forever. He became the leader of the 12, often the first to speak and the first to act, sometimes without thinking. He was bold enough to walk on water, but human enough to sink when fear took over. He promised loyalty, yet denied Jesus 3 times on the night of the crucifixion. But after the resurrection, Peter found redemption. He became the rock on which Jesus said he would build his church. Peter went from doubt to courage, from fisherman to shepherd of faith. Tradition says he preached across Rome and was crucified upside down, refusing to die in the same way as his master. His story shows that faith isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance. Andrew was Peter's brother, and the first person Jesus ever called to follow him. While Peter became the bold spokesman, Andrew was the quiet connector, always bringing people to Jesus. It was Andrew who introduced Peter to Christ. It was Andrew who pointed out the boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fish before the feeding of the 5,000. He never led crowds or gave fiery speeches, but he built bridges. He believed that one person at a time could change the world. His faith was steady, his actions humble. Tradition says Andrew carried the gospel to places like Greece and Asia Minor, where he was eventually martyred on an X-shaped cross, now known as St. Andrew's Cross. Andrew reminds us that greatness in faith doesn't always shout, it often whispers. It's found in those who quietly guide others toward the light, content to stay in the background while helping others take their first step. James the Greater. James, the son of Zebedee, was one of Jesus' closest companions, part of the inner circle with Peter and John. He was there when Jesus raised Jairus' daughter, there at the Transfiguration, and there in Gethsemane during the final prayers. He was known as James the Greater, not because he was better, but probably because he was older or taller than the other James. Alongside his brother John, he was nicknamed Son of Thunder, a title that fit his fiery, passionate spirit. James's faith burned brightly. He preached boldly, and it made him one of the first targets of persecution. According to the book of Acts, he became the first apostle to be martyred, executed by the sword under King Herod Agrippa. But his courage inspired others. James's story is short in the Bible, but full of impact, a reminder that strength and passion can serve God just as powerfully as patience and peace. John, the brother of James, was one of the youngest disciples, and one of the closest to Jesus. He's often called the beloved disciple, not because he was favored, but because he truly understood love. When others competed for greatness, John leaned on Jesus' shoulder and listened. He saw things few others did, the transfiguration, the crucifixion, and the empty tomb. He stood at the cross when everyone else fled, and Jesus entrusted him with the care of Mary, his mother. That trust speaks volumes. John lived longer than any of the apostles and wrote some of the most powerful words in Scripture. God is love. His writings, the Gospel of John, the Epistles, and Revelation, turn deep theology into poetry about light, truth, and eternity. Tradition says John spent his last years in Ephesus and died peacefully, an old man who had seen both heaven and heartbreak. His legacy is simple, yet timeless. In a world of fear, perfect love drives it all away. Philip was one of the first to follow Jesus, and one of the first to bring someone else. When he found Nathanael, he said, "We've found the one Moses wrote about." Philip was curious, practical, and eager to understand, but he often needed proof before belief. At the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus tested him. "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Philip immediately calculated the cost, missing the miracle about to happen. Still, his honesty and realism made him relatable. He asked questions others were too shy to voice. In the Gospel of John, Philip says, "Lord, show us the Father, and it will be enough for us," leading to one of Jesus' most profound answers. "Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." Tradition says Philip preached in Greece and Syria and was eventually martyred. His life reminds us that faith doesn't mean never doubting. It means trusting even when the numbers don't add up. Bartholomew, also known as Nathaniel, is often remembered for his honesty. When Philip first told him about Jesus, he skeptically replied, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" But when he met Jesus, those doubts vanished. Jesus looked at him and said, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." That moment defined Bartholomew, a man sincere in faith and pure in heart. Once convinced, he followed Jesus without hesitation, traveling farther than most apostles after the resurrection. Tradition says he preached in places like India and Armenia, where he helped spread the gospel and later gave his life as a martyr. He was humble, faithful, and fearless, remembered for his truthfulness more than his miracles. In an age of appearance and pride, Bartholomew stands as proof that honesty and humility are their own kind of strength. His story asks us the same question. When truth calls, will we recognize it and follow? Matthew. Before he became a disciple, Matthew was a tax collector, one of the most disliked jobs in Israel. Tax collectors worked for Rome, often overcharging people for profit. When Jesus saw Matthew sitting at his booth, he didn't see greed. He saw potential. "Follow me," Jesus said, and Matthew did. That single step changed everything. The man who once counted coins began counting souls. He later wrote the Gospel of Matthew, carefully showing how Jesus fulfilled ancient prophecies and how mercy matters more than judgment. Matthew's story is one of redemption, a reminder that no past is too dirty for grace to clean. He left wealth and status behind to follow a man who owned nothing but offered everything. Tradition says Matthew preached as far as Ethiopia before dying a martyr. His journey from collector to believer teaches that faith can transform even the most unexpected hearts. When Jesus said, "Follow me," Matthew didn't argue. He just got up and went. Thomas is remembered as Doubting Thomas, but that title hardly tells his story. When Jesus announced he was returning to Judea, a place full of danger, Thomas was the one who said, "Let us also go that we may die with him." That's not doubt. That's courage. Later, after the resurrection, Thomas refused to believe until he saw Jesus with his own eyes and touched the wounds in his hands. When that moment came, his words were among the strongest declarations of faith ever spoken. "My Lord and my God." Thomas's doubt wasn't weakness, it was the hunger for truth. He needed proof, and when he found it, he believed completely. Tradition says he carried the gospel all the way to India, where he built churches and was eventually martyred. His story gives hope to every skeptic. Doubt can be the doorway to faith, and those who question honestly often believe the deepest. James the Less. James the Less, sometimes called the son of Alphaeus, is one of the quietest disciples in the Gospels. The Bible doesn't record his words or deeds in detail, yet tradition paints him as a humble, steady pillar of the early church. Many scholars believe he later became known as James the Just, the leader of the Jerusalem church after Jesus' resurrection. If that's true, this lesser James played one of the greatest leadership roles in Christian history. He's remembered for his deep prayer life, so much that early writers said his knees grew hard like a camel's from constant kneeling. James preached peace, faith, and good works, and he was respected by both Jews and Christians alike. He was eventually martyred in Jerusalem, thrown from the temple, and struck down for refusing to deny Christ. Though quiet and often overlooked, James the Less reminds us that greatness isn't about being seen. It's about being faithful when no one's watching. Thaddeus, also called Jude or Lebbeus, is one of the more mysterious disciples. He doesn't speak much in the Gospels, but when he does, it's powerful. During the Last Supper, he asked Jesus, "Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" That question revealed a thoughtful heart. Thaddeus wanted everyone to experience the truth, not just a chosen few. Jesus' answer, that those who love him will keep his word, became one of the core teachings of faith. Tradition says Thaddeus traveled across Syria and Persia, preaching courageously and healing the sick. He's often remembered as the patron saint of lost causes, a fitting title for a man who believed no soul was beyond redemption. Thaddeus's story reminds us that even the quiet voices matter. He wasn't loud or famous, but his faith carried far. He taught that real devotion isn't about being seen. It's about being steadfast when the world turns away. Simon the Zealot. Simon was called the Zealot, meaning he once belonged to a group that fiercely opposed Roman rule in Judea. Before meeting Jesus, he may have been a revolutionary, passionate, fiery, and ready for battle. But when he followed Christ, that fire found a new purpose. Jesus didn't silence Simon's zeal, he redirected it. Instead of fighting with weapons, Simon fought with faith. His energy, once aimed at rebellion, became a tool for spreading peace and truth. The Bible doesn't record much about his life, but early traditions say he preached across Egypt and Persia, often alongside Thaddeus. Both were eventually martyred for refusing to abandon their message. Simon's story shows that God can transform passion into purpose. The same zeal that once divided can be turned into a force that unites. He reminds us that even the most radical hearts can find peace when guided by something greater than themselves. Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot is the disciple whose name became synonymous with betrayal. He followed Jesus closely, managed the group's money, and saw every miracle firsthand. Yet, somewhere along the way, his heart hardened. For 30 pieces of silver, Judas agreed to lead soldiers to Jesus in the garden. He greeted his teacher with a kiss, a gesture of love turned into a symbol of treachery. When Jesus was condemned, guilt consumed Judas. He returned the silver and took his own life, unable to live with what he'd done. Judas's story is tragic, but it's also deeply human. It shows how greed, pride, or disappointment can cloud even the brightest souls. Yet even as Judas fell, Jesus still called him friend. His story isn't just about betrayal, it's about the choices that shape every heart. It reminds us that faith can't be bought, and that forgiveness, though offered freely, must still be accepted. Now these were 12 ordinary men who changed the world through faith and courage. Which disciple inspired you most?
I was wondering if, no, it might
Comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more timeless stories.
And it'll fix it, so.
Brought to you by our online learning platform, the Religion Department. Join our upcoming seminar, Learning Coptic Through the Gospel of Thomas, to learn the final phase of the ancient Egyptian language. Few prophets in Islam are as mysterious as Idris, the second prophet of Islam after Adam and the third prophet mentioned by name in the Quran. He's commonly identified as the biblical prophet Enoch. Like Enoch, Idris is considered an esoteric or mysterious figure, strongly associated with secret wisdom and the mysteries of creation. And yet, most of what we know about Idris does not actually come from the Quran. Again, like Enoch, the details come later, in layers of commentary, legend, and interpretation that grew up around him. But notice they have noticeably different names, and the Quran itself never comes right out and says that Idris and Enoch are one and the same. So what exactly is Idris's relationship to Enoch? Are they really the same figure? And if they are, what sets the Islamic version of Enoch apart from his portrayals in Jewish and Christian traditions? Just a quick note up front, the question of who exactly Idris is has never been fully settled, whether we're talking about early medieval or modern Muslim thought. In this video, we'll only scratch the surface, but I'm aiming to give you a solid introduction to the figure. Let's start with the obvious place, the Quran, where he shows up only twice. In Surah 19, Idris is described as follows. Mention too in the scripture the story of Idris. He was a man of truth, a prophet. We raised him to a high position. He shows up here in a section explaining the importance of other prophets. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ishmael, Moses, all of whom are known from Jewish and Christian traditions. Here God is describing the virtues of each prophet and the grace he gave to each one of them. Idris is called truthful, or Siddiq in Arabic, a word that can also carry the connotation of being totally faithful to God, in a sense of fully accepting the truth of God's power and his will in the world. Notably, in this passage, only Idris and Abraham are given that title. Okay, but this still doesn't answer our question, who is he? Well, Surah 21 gives us another another small clue. It's only 2 verses, but once again he's singled out as someone especially favored by God. And remember Ishmael, Idris, and Dul-Kifl. They were all steadfast. We admitted them to our mercy. They were truly righteous. Like in Surah 19, Idris is not described on his own, but in relation to other prophets. Ishmael is a familiar name, but the one that follows, Dul-Kifl, is not. His name means possessor of the portion, and scholars have suggested that he could be Ezekiel, Joshua, Obadiah, Isaiah, or even the Buddha. Quite a mix of candidates. Idris is already a mysterious figure, and here he's listed next to yet another prophet whose identity is unclear. So we still haven't made much progress in figuring out his identity. Still, what stands out here is Idris is described as steadfast, righteous, and blessed with God's mercy. Another puzzle is his name, which does not have a clear Arabic origin. Like the name Iblis, Islam's primary name for Satan, Idris follows what's called the Ifil pattern, an Arabic word formation that often appears in words borrowed from other languages. This might suggest that the name Idris has a foreign origin. The name might come from the Arabic root letters Dal, Ra, Sin, akin to the Hebrew letters Dalet, Resh, Shin, which generally relate to the concepts of studying or learning. Others propose that his name is actually closer etymologically to the name Ezra, a priest and scribe in the Hebrew Bible, and may derive from the Greek form of that name Esdras. Others have suggested potential connections to Elijah. Whatever the case though, it's clear that Idris's name linguistically does not have a clear origin, nor is it obviously connected to Enoch, which is curious to say the least. So after looking at the Quran and the etymology of his name, what do we really know about Idris? Not much. He was a prophet, he had a reputation for being truthful and steadfast, but notably he was also, quote, raised to a high position. That phrase may be one of the key details that Muslim scholars and later interpreters tried to make sense of, which brings us finally to Enoch. Like Idris, Enoch only shows up a few times in the Bible, where he's one of the key patriarchs before the flood, the father of Methuselah and the great-great-grandson of Adam. The verses where he shows up are famously mysterious. In Genesis, we're told only a few details. He fathered Methuselah at the age of 65, he walked with God for another 300 years, had other kids, and then at the age of 365, he was no more, because God took him. In the Second Temple period, Jewish writers massively expanded on his character in a series of apocryphal works generally called Enochic literature. The so-called First Book of Enoch is the oldest and probably the most famous of these. It's a compendium of texts that includes visions of heaven, stories about fallen angels called the Watchers, and elaborate prophecies about judgment. The somewhat later Second Book of Enoch also describes his ascent through multiple heavens, where he's transformed into a glorious angelic figure. The Third Book of Enoch goes even further, identifying Enoch with the archangel Metatron, the supreme angel, a lesser god seated beside God's throne as his celestial attendant. I have published videos on all 3 of these if you're interested. Early Christians also saw Enoch as a model of faith and a witness to God's power over life and death. In the New Testament book of Hebrews, Enoch's brief mention in Genesis is expanded into a testimony of faith. By faith, Enoch was taken so that he did not experience death. For it was attested before he was taken away that he had pleased God. Another text, the Epistle of Jude, explicitly quotes from 1st Enoch, presenting Enoch as a prophet who foresaw the coming judgment upon the ungodly. These references show that at least some early Christians treated Enoch as an authoritative prophet whose heavenly ascent and revelations could be used to support Christian teachings. So when did Muslims start linking Enoch with Idris? Historians are not entirely sure, but it probably happened within the 1st century of Islam. Early compilers of hadith literature floated the idea, including Wahib ibn Munabbih, who died around 730 CE. He considered Idris and Enoch to be the same figure. He writes, and Enoch's name in the Torah is Hebrew, and its translation in Arabic is Idris. And he is Idris, peace be upon him. He goes on to say that Idris had received 30 books of revelation, though some say this means 30 pages of the Quran. Regardless, the idea here is that Idris received special knowledge straight from God, and that he was aware of the truth of revelation early on, centuries before Muhammad. Again, Enoch's ascent to heaven is the defining feature of his story. He's taken up into heaven and never experiences death. Looking back to Surah 19, which states God raised Idris to a high position, the common understanding of that verse suggests that Idris was brought to heaven by God to serve some sort of celestial purpose. The assumption that he was raised into heaven like Enoch may be why so many Muslim commentators saw the two as one and the same figure. In one hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sees Idris in the 4th heaven during a part of the night journey called the Miraj, a series of visions Muhammad experienced during his own temporary ascent to the heavens. The text says, when I was brought up, I saw Idris in the 4th heaven. And so, just like Enoch, God pulled Idris up from earth and gave him a place in heaven. In Islamic cosmology, there are 7 layers to heaven, each with their own special qualities. This fourth heaven, called Mauna, is made of brass or white gold, and it's sometimes understood to be the eternal home of Idris alongside the Angel of Tears, a being identified in Jewish and Muslim traditions as Cassiel. So from this we can see that God affords a special place in the cosmos for Idris, just like Enoch in ancient Jewish and Christian thought. Okay, so far we've seen how Muslims connected Enoch with Idris, emphasizing their shared ascent into heaven and their roles as bearers of divine wisdom. But the story does not end there. Some scholars went a step further and linked Idris to yet another legendary sage, Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus is the legendary sage behind Hermeticism, a philosophical and religious tradition based around the text attributed to him. Historians generally understood him to be a syncretic combination of the Egyptian god Thoth and his Greek equivalent Hermes, both of whom are linked with the transmission of knowledge. By the late 1st century, though, Hermes Trismegistus was recognized as the quintessential philosopher, magician, and divine sage of the far distant past. Hermetic texts claim to be composed by him, and they span a gigantic range of topics: the nature of the universe and God, alchemy, astrology, magic, medicine, and a whole lot more. The most famous of these texts are found in the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of 17 Greek texts composed sometime between 100 and 300 CE. They were later compiled into one corpus, though the roots of Hermeticism likely go back even further to the Ptolemaic period in Egypt. In fact, the Greek historian Herodotus identified Thoth with the Greek Hermes as far back as the 5th century BCE. I've published a whole intro to Hermeticism here if you're interested. In European literary traditions, Hermes Trismegistus became a towering symbol of occult wisdom, standing at the heart of Renaissance esotericism. He's credited with secret knowledge of astrology, alchemy, and magic, and Renaissance thinkers treated him as an ancient sage whose writings preserved a primordial philosophy older than Plato or even Moses. And in the Muslim world, he would also go on to represent a variety of esoteric or occult interests. But Muslim authors conceived of him differently. Take his epithet, for example, Trismegistus, which they interpreted differently than their European counterparts. In Greek, Trismegistus quite literally means the thrice great, which likely signals that Hermes had wisdom on an almost unimaginable scale. It may actually derive from an epithet of Thoth found in the Temple of Esna, south of Thebes, which calls Thoth the Great, the Great, the Great. Though in Arabic, the epithet is often rendered as Hermes' triplicate in wisdom. Muslim thinkers interpreted this as describing not one, but 3 separate figures, all named Hermes and each with their own life story and qualities. Together they formed a unified tradition of wisdom stretching across history. One Hermes was an Egyptian who lived before the flood, another was a Babylonian who lived right after the flood, and the final Hermes was also an Egyptian who lived long after the flood. Scholars aren't really sure where this idea of 3 different Hermeses came from. The tradition is messy and explanations vary. In 1954, the scholar Martin Plessner suggested that part of the story can be traced to the early 9th century Byzantine chronicle of George Synkelus, which quoted a book known as the Book of Sothis. This text mentions 2 guys, both named Hermes, one right before the flood and one right after. In this version, the first Hermes inscribed hidden knowledge in the Egyptian language on stone pillars so they could survive forever. But when the Great Flood came, the writings were buried and lost, only to be rediscovered by the second Hermes who restored ancient wisdom to humanity. It seems that stories like this filtered into Arabic literature through Greek sources that were circulating in the Middle East during the first centuries of Islamic rule. Where the idea of a 3rd Hermes came from, however, we just don't know, but regardless, the first Hermes is consistently identified as none other than Enoch Idris. In his book, The Arabic Hermes, the scholar Kevin von Blottel shares how many Muslim writers connected these 3 figures. While the notion that Idris and Enoch are the same figure goes back to the 1st century of Islam, this connection with Hermes came a bit later. During the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates, various Greek philosophical subjects started to enter Arabic literary circles, which included Hermetic writings. The first text to clearly link Idris with Hermes is the Kitab al-Uluf, or the Book of the Thousands, which was composed by the Jewish astrologer Abu Mashar al-Balkhi. He was viewed as an authoritative figure on all things Hermes. Now, his Book of the Thousands does not survive as a single text, but it does pop up here and there in other authors' quotations. One quotation says that there were 3 Hermes. The first of them is Hermes who was before the flood. The significance of Hermes is a title, like saying Caesar. The Persians state that his grandfather was Gayumar, that is Adam. The Hebrews state that he is Enoch, which in Arabic is Idris. Even if it's only a fragment of the full book, this snippet gives us a lot of information. Here Abu Mashar says that Hermes is a title for more than one person, like Caesar the title for Roman rulers. Thus, it makes sense that there can be 3 different Hermes across time and space that are still connected because of their innate bond with esoteric knowledge. Later Muslim writers offered similar interpretations, like this 13th century Arab chronicler, who wrote Hermes is Enoch and he is Idris. Hermes is Syriac and means the scholar, as Hermes Trismegistus means the scholar of scholars. The word Hermes is not a name, but an attribute of knowledge. Idris is also not a name. He was called Idris because of his great scientific studies. His real name is Enoch. This account takes a similar angle as Abu Mashar, who said that Hermes was a title and not a name, but here he goes a step further and says Idris is also just a title. The Book of the Thousand also shows how people imagined the first Hermes as a righteous figure and a descendant of Adam, though here Adam is identified with Gayumart, a sort of Adam-equivalent first man figure in pre-Islamic Persian religions. So Abu Mashar presents the first Hermes as a figure who blends Hebrew, Persian, Arabic, and Greek traditions into a single identity. In this portrayal, Hermes emerges as a primordial being, one of the very first to walk the earth. And so we get a hint here as to how the perception of Hermes as Enoch and Idris works. Abu Mashar tells us that each community simply names the figure differently depending on their cultural context. Enoch equals Idris equals the first Hermes. The 10th century scholar Ibn Juljul says that the first Hermes was the first to study celestial events and the stars, making him the first known astrologer. He was also the first to build temples to God, the first to study medicine, and the first poet. We're also told that he was the first to foresee the coming of the flood and left warnings about it. This Hermes also lived in Upper Egypt, and he's credited as the true builder of the pyramids. Ibn Juljul writes, it is reported by the account transmitted from the early Muslims that Idris was the first to study books, to investigate the sciences. God sent 30 scrolls down to him. He was the first to sew clothing and to wear it. God raised him to a high place. In short, since Idris was cast as the very first scientist and philosopher, people concluded he must be the same as Enoch and Hermes Trismegistus. In many ways, this mirrors the trajectory of Enoch in Judaism and Christianity, an obscure biblical figure whose role expanded dramatically in later writings. Though the Quran mentions Idris only briefly, later traditions multiplied his identity. First, a prophet like Enoch, then a primordial philosopher like Hermes, he became a figure who bridged scripture, philosophy, and esotericism. Hey everyone, a few months ago we offered an Intro to Coptic class where you can learn the final phase of the ancient Egyptian language using the Gospel of Thomas as your textbook. The response was amazing and a lot of you asked if we'd run it again. So we're bringing it back, and this time we're offering a Level 2 seminar if you want to go deeper. Dr. Lydia Bramer-McCullum is once again teaching the course. Lydia is an incredible Harvard-trained scholar of early Christianity and an absolute master of the Coptic language. Level 1 is our beginner-friendly course. You'll start with learning the Coptic alphabet, pronunciation, and grammar, and by the end you'll actually be reading and translating passages from the Gospel of Thomas. Level 2 picks up right after that, and it's for students who want to strengthen their reading skills. You can sign up over at our online learning platform, religiondepartment.com/Coptic. Lydia explains the course way better than I ever could, so I'll let her tell you about it herself.
And right off the bat, students will be learning a new alphabet, right?
Yes, Coptic uses the Greek alphabet rather than hieroglyphs to write the Egyptian language, or this phase of the Egyptian language, and adds a few extra letters or characters. Why it does this is because Greek does not contain all of the sounds that Egyptian language uses. So those extra letters allow for those extra sounds to be expressed in Coptic as they were in earlier stages of the language.
So what's the first Coptic word that your students can expect to learn?
I introduced the alphabet in this course with a set of Coptic animals that both appear and those that don't appear in the Gospel of Thomas. So you will leave with skills beyond just reading the Gospel of Thomas. One that I pull out that is definitely the first word that students learn is the word for lion, or mui. So I use this as the first noun for example sentences, basic learning of the articles, or how to say the lion versus a lion, p mui or u mui in Coptic. And quite quickly, again in week 1, students will already be practicing the Coptic alphabet by reading all of the names that appear in the different sayings of Gospels. So becoming familiar with what Mariam and Jesus and Thomas look like in Coptic alphabet.
Members of the Religion Department get 50% off all of our seminars. So if you join as a member, you can take Level 1 for just $199 total. That's $99 for the annual membership and $100 for the Coptic seminar. And if you already know you want to continue on to Level 2, we're offering a special discounted bundle for both courses for $275. So if you've ever wanted to learn the final phase of the ancient Egyptian language and actually read the Gospel of Thomas in Coptic, head on over to religiondepartment.com/Coptic. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Joseph. I'll start doing some dishes. Just help us get out the
Alright, so
door,
let's try this.
please.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
I said, just help us get
Say
out
it
the
3
door,
times and it's
please.
supposed to appear right next to you. And well, I guess here it is. It's about time we discuss Beetlejuice once again because we do have some
Oh,
extra
hey, have you heard
discoveries
about this
about
one?
this famous
That
star. And discoveries that potentially once and
Beetlejuice
for all
has a
explain
partner?
everything weird it's been doing in the last few years, solving one of the
You guys
major
even care
mysteries in
about
astronomy.
Beetlejuice? You know
And
that
so in this video
star?
we're going to discuss several recent papers about Beetlejuice, talk about
I don't
exactly what
know. It's
scientists
kind of. Do you
discovered,
want
and
tin
of course
chips?
discuss
It's
the
kind of
mysteries
chilly.
and the solutions. But
They do
first, let's I
match.
guess review what happened to Beetlejuice in the last 6 years, and why it was even mysterious to begin with. Well, the why part is pretty easy to answer. This is one of the brightest stars in the night skies. And so if it suddenly goes through some dramatic shifts like this dip you see right here, and starts to dim in a
Beetlejuice, for
very
some
bizarre
reason,
way
has
like
always
it
kind
did
of been a
in
famous
2019,
star.
almost
And then
everyone
when
is
that
going to
movie
talk
came
about
out,
it,
no one
trying to
really
figure
knew
out
what
what's
the fuck.
happening.
Like,
And
what?
here, despite the distance
But
of at least
because it's in
550
Orion,
light years away from us, because the
and I
star
don't know
is so
why.
large, approximately 770 times
But yeah,
the
everyone
solar
knows
size,
Beetlejuice. But I
it's
guess
actually
it's supposed to go
relatively easy to observe
supernova
the star with a lot
in
of
our
modern
lifetime.
telescopes. And here we do have
It's
several
been
images in
predicted for
different
a little
wavelengths
while. Like
that
they're not
show us this
exactly sure.
enormous, gigantic star,
But
and even
now they
show us
think it
what
has
happens
like an
around it
invisible
and its
partner or
stellar
something.
atmosphere. But then, in
They're just able to see
2019, the star went through some dramatic shifts. It experienced what scientists now refer to as the Great Dimming. The brightness suddenly dropped by a factor of 3, making the star much dimmer than ever before. And so there was a lot of speculations that maybe it's about to go supernova. As a matter of fact, the entire internet and all of the press started to report on this star like never before. And quite a lot of people were desperately waiting for that supernova to happen. Mostly
If it
because it would
smells
just
moldy,
produce
just run it
something
through
really
one more
beautiful
time.
in the night skies.
A little
Well,
bit.
did it
Do
explode?
they? Yeah.
No, of course not. And that's because
That
eventually this was
sucks. We have
explained
to run it
as an
through.
entirely different
Put a little
phenomenon.
soap. You need a
This
little
was
bit
a
of soap in there.
gigantic stellar burp. A
Still
massive
that.
surface mass ejection of extremely hot material that,
Kill
as
the
it
mold.
cooled down, temporarily blocked the star in the same way that sometimes clouds block the sun. And the evidence for this was really
And yeah, new
strong.
rule, dude.
You
No
can
more
actually find
doing
out more about
clothes
this
that
in
you
one of the
fold.
videos in the description, with additional studies
Fold that
eventually
laundry.
establishing that this star might go supernova in the next 100,000
Your mom
years,
got
or
pissy
possibly
with me.
even a
Yeah,
million
she'll do
years,
laundry, but
but
then we
not
end
much
up with
sooner.
fucking
But there
piles
was
of
still a
washcloths.
mystery. A very critical question still remained. Why did it actually burp so much, and why did it produce this bizarre
You say
cloud?
that, but
And though
good
at
luck
first this
trying to
was bizarre,
enforce it.
eventually in the last few years, researchers observed similar phenomena around very
Yeah, we
similar
just need to
stars, including
fold
the
stuff.
famous Antares. And so some studies suggested that maybe this is just something that happens around all of them, we've just never noticed before. And so maybe
That's
this
why
was
those
just some kind of
pants
a
went
long-term
moldy
cycle
because
of
there was a
brightening
fucking
and
load in the
dimming
dryer
that
and
sometimes
nobody
involves
wants to. I get
ejection
it.
of
No,
dust.
I didn't want to
And
get it
so
out
since
either.
Betelgeuse is technically
I didn't want to
defined as
fold it
an
either.
evolved red giant, it's essentially at least 8 million years old, making it a grandpa amongst these stars
Man,
that
that
could just
organic
possess some
plain
kind of an
yogurt gets
extreme
really
instability
close
that
to
may
sour
show
cream.
complex variability in brightness, resulting
Well,
in these
yeah, it
bizarre
almost
bursts.
is.
But
Is
not
it?
everyone agree with
Yeah,
this
it's like one step
explanation,
away from
and
it.
additional
No, it
observations
really does.
revealed something else somewhat bizarre. By studying what I guess you would
It
call
has no
a
flavor, you
heartbeat of
know,
the
it's just
star, or
plain.
technically by using what's known as astroseismology, and detecting vibrations from within the star, visible in various emissions, researchers discovered that there seem to be at least 2 dominant periodic fluctuations. First, there is a relatively
And hey,
fast
you got a
cycle, the
match,
so-called
girl.
primary pulsation that's
Oh,
approximately 400 days long.
you want
That's
the
actually
hat?
what you kind of see as these mini dips everywhere, and that's something that many different
And the
stars
hat?
possess and not unusual
And
at
your
all.
shoes?
But there was also a kind of a second, far more puzzling pulsation, or
It's a
a
little
long
chilly out
secondary period that
there. Yeah.
lasted for about
See, you
6
might have to
years,
put
or
pants on.
2100 days. And that one could
Sadie,
not be
it's
easily
chilly out there.
explained
You might have
because
to put pants
not a
and
lot of
tennis
stars
shoes
seem
on.
to possess this.
Hey, go
And
ahead
so
and put your
explaining
shirt
this
on.
through some kind of an internal dynamics
Yeah,
inside the
that's
star
tight.
was basically kind of impossible. And so for many, many years, various theories were proposed with various suggestions and various propositions. For example, giant convection cells, or some kind of a dust effect from various previous emissions, but none of this really fit the data, and none of this explained this very bizarre periodicity, which eventually led to the, I guess, biggest hypothesis of them all. Maybe there is an unseen companion, or some kind of a really massive planet orbiting Betelgeuse that's causing all of this every 6 years, with this idea officially proposed in 2 separate studies back in 2024. But there was a problem, and I guess you can kind of see the problem here. We don't really seem to
Remember
see
how she
signs of any
refused to
partners
wear
anywhere.
anything with those
Many
tattoos?
observations of
Remember she
Betelgeuse have been done
refused.
over the years,
See how it
and
is?
none of them showed any partners. But the
We do
theoretical
it too.
studies
I get you
still
just make it up
suggest
and you
that
feel weird.
Betelgeuse
Just,
light
yeah.
curve, combined with periodic variations and even radial velocity and astrometry,
Just
seem to
want
be
to do it
still
your way.
best explained by a massive object
Even if it doesn't
orbiting
make
around it.
sense, you
And
just want to do
so
it your
scientists
way.
propose that this was the so-called Alpha Orionis B. B in this case refers to the partner. But because this is the internet, it eventually became known as the Beetle Body. Beetle Body orbiting every 2100 days.
Since you
With the
gave on
official
the pan,
observations
sounds
and
good.
most of the suggestions, estimating the subject to be about 0.5 to maybe 2 solar masses in total, and orbiting approximately 9 astronomical units away from Betelgeuse. Distance comparable to planet Saturn. But because this star was a giant star, and because this distance was really close to the surface of the star, in some sense this companion would be almost swimming within Betelgeuse's extended atmosphere, and would also thus be kind of invisible. It would kind of sort of look like this. And so this orbiting companion model immediately offered a crucial explanation for pretty much everything. Such a companion in such a tight orbit could easily disturb some of the Betelgeuse's stellar wind, and sometimes, on some occasions, sweep away huge amounts of dust from the surface, introducing a dramatic mass loss, which would then produce these bizarre burps. And various simulations and theoretical predictions literally explain this very well, with most of this basically making sense in theory.
Well, do your hair.
We
I
actually
need to
talked
roll
about
you
this
some
a few years
Fisher
back in one of the videos in the description,
leave.
but this was just a theory. Anyway, so yeah, basically there was just no evidence. Without visual observations, it was
All right,
really
Buzz. I
difficult
think you
to
got
prove
room.
all
Yeah, you got room
but
in
there was
here.
also an extremely important projection that was made
I have
that
to have
turned out
brought
to be
yourself
correct.
a plate.
This companion should be in certain locations, such as, for example, behind Betelgeuse, during periods of minimum brightness, like the gray dimming. But sometimes it would have a perfect position to be actually capturable by at least some telescopes. And so here the theoretical case and the predictions were strong enough for a few scientists to finally try this. And so despite the fact that Betelgeuse is extremely bright and very large in size, there was still a chance to see this companion in certain parts of its orbit. And just as a side note, here in terms of total brightness, scientists have actually compared this to trying to find a tiny firefly right next to a car's headlight. And so that's essentially the brightness comparison here, and why this was so challenging. But because the researchers here were pretty convinced it should be there, they were able to time the orbit just right, when the partner achieved maximum apparent separation, and when it should be visible the most. This was supposed to happen around December 2024, and just as a side note, that's how ridiculously precise this particular prediction and theory was. And so in December 2024, a lot of astronomers launched the targeted observation campaigns using a lot of telescopes, trying to finally find it. Or at least trying to find some kind of an explanation for what's going on here. And well, it didn't take long to finally discover something. Something that was actually visible in many different images and in different wavelengths. With some of the most recent images being released by the Chandra's X-ray Observatory, that was also able to tell us a little bit more about the companion just by observing the types of X-rays it was producing. And well, here's that famous image we've discussed previously a few months back that officially confirmed its existence. And it was almost definitely there, even though the image here was not particularly strong and particularly high quality. Just the fact that it was exactly in the same position as predicted was a huge deal, with several additional studies from the last few months basically confirming exactly what we thought and exactly what the scientists believed about this object. But I guess more importantly, finally explaining this dip. No supernova, just a companion. But as I mentioned, one of the companions here used Chandra X-ray Observatory, one of the most powerful X-ray telescopes in existence. And here, if the companion was some kind of a compact object, for example, a white dwarf or a neutron star, both of which technically fit the predicted mass range, we would actually be seeing very specific X-rays coming from here, because this object would be accreting some of the material from Betelgeuse and thus emitting certain X-rays. But following extensive observations, nothing was actually found. And this non-detection is important for establishing what this object is. Here, this almost definitively shows us that this is not an accreting compact object, not a white dwarf, not a neutron star, obviously not a black hole, and has to be some kind of a star. With a parallel campaign using Hubble Space Telescope and specifically the STIS instrument that looked at the features in the far ultraviolet, also detected in a non-detection of spectral lines, which allowed scientists to place a constraint on the total mass of this object. So here, it's almost certainly not above approximately 1.5 solar masses, because otherwise it would be producing a lot of ultraviolet light. And so right now scientists think that this is about 1.1 solar masses in total, or surprisingly, very similar to the Sun. But I guess even more surprisingly, this companion has to be a normal stellar object that's about 8 million years old, that co-evolved with Betelgeuse, and based on its mass, is possibly still just what's known as a YSO, young stellar object. Basically, a kind of a baby star that potentially doesn't even have nuclear fusion yet, and that's still growing and developing. Scientifically, this is known as the pre-main sequence star. But in a normal YSO, we usually have a lot of emissions coming through these jets, massive amounts of stellar winds, and also an incredibly large protoplanetary disk. Here though, because it's orbiting a much more massive, larger star, none of this is present. And so this is definitely a really exciting discovery. So exciting, as a matter of fact, that it now has a name. It's now referred to as Siwarha, the Arabic for her bracelet, because the word Betelgeuse is a slightly incorrect way of saying hand of the giant in Arabic that's been unfortunately misspelled by some of the earlier scholars. The original Arabic is Yad al-Jawza, but the European translators in the 13th century misspelled Y as B, making this Bad al-Jawza, which eventually got shortened to Betelgeuse. But because Steve Howell and his team have now officially confirmed the existence of this object by physically observing this with the Gemini telescope, now the next step is essentially trying to investigate exactly what this object is and what's going to happen to it once Betelgeuse goes supernova. And honestly, right now, there is almost no doubt that this object really exists. Not only was it in exactly the same location where researchers predicted it to be, it has now been observed in several different wavelengths, even in some of the previous images from 2020 that were previously accidentally missed. But missed because this object is just so much dimmer, by at least 6 magnitudes in brightness. And so based on the brightness difference, right now the direct imaging data suggests a slightly higher mass estimate of maybe about 1.6 solar masses, and possibly because this object is still growing and even absorbing some of the mass from Betelgeuse itself. But the profile of the young stellar object is definitely there, a very hot pre-main sequence star that's a lot more massive and brighter than the Sun, and has not yet settled into its main sequence stage. But this would be the first confirmation of such object that's not orbiting by itself with a protoplanetary disk, but instead is orbiting something that's eventually going to explode. And since previously this detection was considered to be nearly impossible, in astronomy this is a monumental discovery. Even though we've known about the star for thousands of years, it wasn't really until a few months back, in 2025, that its companion has finally been confirmed. And that means that we might see very similar dips and very similar dimming events in the future, because this object will eventually reach the same point in orbit and might produce something similar again. And so as the star Siwarha goes through the material ejected by the red supergiant, it may occasionally clear up a lot of mass all at once, producing these very strange, very powerful emissions, with lots of dust leaving all at once and eventually blocking the star. But there is also a new mystery. A mystery in regards to its formation. Right now this kind of challenges the idea behind binary star formation models, because typically binary stars will usually have very similar masses. We don't really see a lot of stars with such a huge mass discrepancy, yet the observation here implies that the mass ratio is at least 16 to 1.
And the pieces are kind of big. How many? I should look at the box.
Very tiny companion,
but
which
yeah,
makes
it was like
this
a couple
possibly
hours,
the
dude.
first such object discovered.
Worked on it on and off
first
last night.
extreme mass ratio
Oh,
binary
because we brought her
that's not been
puzzle. I got her
confirmed,
puzzle
which
board.
means that they probably exist all
I
over
brought
the
it in,
place,
yeah.
and which also means that maybe other stars, including Antares, that has actually gone through very similar dimming events, possibly has its own partner too. But since this is just the beginning of this exploration, right now we don't really have any answers. But at the same time, this companion also solves a really old mystery about Betelgeuse's rotation. Betelgeuse spins a little bit faster than it should. And previously
I worked
this was
with a
believed
guy
to be
who
the
does
result of some
mushroom
kind of
hunter.
merger.
That's
We
why there's
discussed
guys who are
defame
really good at
videos in the
hunting
description,
mushrooms.
but the existence of this companion suggests that the rotation is maybe induced through some kind of a tidal interaction
You and your
as the
sister
object
played with
orbits
puzzles.
around
You
the
guys remember
star
playing
and
with
as
those
it pulls
puzzles? That
on it
was
in the same way that
that
the
whole
moon pulls
box
on
of
Earth
puzzles is
and
from you
changes the
guys.
rotation of planet
I could
Earth
get
as
an
well.
hour
And so right now this
at least
object
from you
surprisingly
guys.
solves
You and
quite
your
a lot of
sister.
different mysteries.
That was
But I guess, so
man,
what about its future? Well, at the moment, based on the simulations and the predictions, because the star, as it orbits around Betelgeuse, seems to actually interact with its gas, there's a very high chance it's on a kind of a spiraling inward orbit, where basically it's slowly approaching Betelgeuse closer and closer. And that means that maybe in the next 10,000 years, even before Betelgeuse explodes, it may fall into it, combining in the process, which possibly might even cause the Betelgeuse to go supernova just a little bit earlier. Or it may survive and get kicked out of the system, becoming its own star in the process. Alternatively, as Betelgeuse becomes some kind of a neutron star, it may basically create a typical binary that might eventually even become an X-ray binary, meaning which we've seen in the past. But right now, the future of the star and its companion is not truly known. Either way, though, the entire process of discovery of this object is a tremendous success for astronomy. Going from a very anomalous observation in 2019 to a potential prediction of an object in orbit to eventual confirmation of its existence is absolutely incredible. But more importantly, we should be able to see this again sometimes in late November 2027, when Suwarta is predicted to reach its maximum prolongation and become even more visible, thus allowing astronomers to learn more about it and discover its true nature. And so until 2027, we're unlikely to learn more about this object, but we may still talk about Betelgeuse if there are some other explanations or additional propositions. And so once we learn something else, we'll definitely come back and discuss this more in some of the future videos. Until then, thank you for watching, subscribe, come back tomorrow to learn something else, support this channel on Patreon, where you can find additional videos without any ads, and can DM me directly, or by joining channel membership that grants you early access and a few more videos. You can also buy the Wonderful Person t-shirt in the description below. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye-bye.
Can't do much with them, but then I wasn't in that. I wasn't in whatever you call it, bracket to get the neck set up. So you start getting like model from neck picks or models or All right, what time is it? Yeah, we're leaving in a little bit further. I gotta put my teeth in. Can't hear shit.
Let's talk about heroin. So you write, Afghanistan, after 8 years of U.S. occupation, was now producing 9 times more heroin than the rest of the world combined. And of
So
course,
what the
that
fuck
bled
is
over
going on
into the
down in
Afghan
Venezuela,
population.
dude? Why could they be so
The
mad
Afghan
at killing
National
those
Army
guys?
was filled with addicts, as you write.
I mean, I know
But
Maduro and
then
all that. I'm not,
the
but like,
alliance between, in essence, these narco traffickers,
you could tell like
in
they
the Northern
pissed
Alliance
somebody
to the
off.
rebels,
And I don't know, maybe it's the
essentially drew
Venezuelans
in
or killing
members of these
seals.
special forces. Explain how that happened.
They've got some bad,
So
there's some special forces
Afghanistan
going
under U.S.
on, and they're getting their
occupation
asses. And
produced
so Trump,
more
the
than
Navy
more
now. Oh,
heroin
now
than
we
the
got to have a
entire
real
world could
war
absorb.
because you
And
can't
the truth
infiltrate like
around
the
this
North. You
phenomenon,
can't come
I think,
in
is
and
one of the best kept secrets
so
of the
those
21st
speedboats
century.
are
And
Joseph
the
Mahar, those
lack of
speedboats are blowing
awareness
up or patrolling the
in the
shores of
general
Venezuela to
population
make
among
sure those seals
Americans
can't enter through
is really
sea, bro.
astonishing. But it's not a
They're
surprise. Their
catching those
ignorance has
frog
been
teams trying to
procured by the
infiltrate.
mass media and the government, which is hiding
Yeah,
this sort of crime of the
and
century,
it's
as
pissing
I sometimes think about
the
it.
Navy off.
The
So they got
the
up it. You're gonna
2000s and the
escalate. Now we're
2010s
gonna
were a time
escalate,
of
dude, because
a
you
global
can't.
heroin crisis around the world. In the
I
United
don't
States,
know. That's my.
as it's
I
recent
bet
memory,
it's
people are
something,
well
dude.
aware that we had a
Because you
terrible
could tell they're
heroin
pissy.
crisis in this country.
Like
It
the
became
military is
nearly
pissy,
the leading cause of death among adults. And then, of course,
and
morphed
it
and
doesn't make
transformed
sense.
into
You
the
know, like
fentanyl
what the
epidemic, which is
fuck?
with
What?
us today and has never
Then
been
that's
worse
why
than
you're
it is right now.
hearing like, yeah, this
Well,
shit
the
ain't.
cause of
It's
that
illegal,
heroin
dude.
crisis was down to the war in Afghanistan. The war in Afghanistan caused the heroin crisis globally.
Because your
Europe, in
covert
Russia, in
operations are
Australia,
failing,
in
you're going to
Asia,
bring in
and also in Canada and in the
because you
United
suck.
States. All of these countries, countries that
SEAL
have,
Team 6
you know,
sucks
that are the
ass.
first world or have a large
You're all a
market
bunch of
for drug
fucking
users,
cowboy
were
rednecks and you talk a
inundated
bunch of
with
shit.
highly potent and
You,
very,
you
very
lie.
cheap heroin
You
from
fucking lie
Afghanistan
and you
during
tell a
this
bunch
time.
of stories
And it's
about
just
how.
supply and demand. When there's that much of it, it becomes a lot cheaper. In the United
So
States,
now you
people
got to bring
whose
in the real
opioid
Navy.
addiction have been primed by loose prescribing practices
Why the
around
fuck we paying you,
prescription pills,
dude?
found that they
No,
could
then
buy
you tell the
heroin for a
SEAL
lot
Team,
cheaper than
why?
they could get,
What the
let's
fuck
say,
are you
some
good
Percocet
for,
pills that
dude?
have been diverted from the illicit drug market.
I
And
gotta have a
the
public
dirty
war
secret
now
that
because you
no
can't
one
do your
in our government or media
bro.
bothered to tell
All
us all
right,
these years was that the people in Afghanistan that were producing those
back to
drugs, they were
recon.
people on the U.S.
You're
payroll.
recon for the
They were
regular army is
narco
what you
warlords
are, guys.
that were directly
You're
armed,
You're
sponsored, and
scouts.
protected by the CIA
You're
and the special
scouts, bro.
forces.
You're scouts.
And that complicity went all the way up
Come
to the
on,
top
stop.
of the corrupt Afghan client state, Hamid Karzai and his family in particular. You know, they were
Anyway,
definitely
yeah, because I
implicated
can't
in it,
figure out what
and
the fuck
many
is going
other
on down
named warlords. You know, I have their
there.
names in the book.
Nobody can.
And the sources that I cite to demonstrate for a fact that this
Like
government, this
Trump, like
client
the
government in
Navy's
Afghanistan,
blowing
was
up
effectively, you know,
speedboats,
the
right?
biggest drug cartel in
For
world
what?
history. And the fact that the United States, the whole of the United States government was complicit
You
in
can't
this
say they're
is
smuggling
really
drugs, Joseph. They're not off the
mind-boggling to
coast of
contemplate,
America. What the
and
fuck are you
not enough
talking about,
people are aware of
smuggling
it, in my
drugs?
opinion.
So let's talk about how these
So
special forces
what
operators
excuse are they
use the
using to blow
skills
these
that
boats up?
they have learned and become drug dealers.
And they're saying they're
You
drug terror. What are you
profile,
talking? So
his name is
charged
Huff,
then?
former
But you're
state
not gonna.
trooper. Um,
What the fuck
and
are you
then maybe
talking about, dude?
Los Zetas. I mean, so you train, these people are highly trained.
You
And
see
they
what I'm
take
saying,
those
dude?
skills
Joseph,
into
this
the
shit doesn't.
drug market. Talk about that
The fuck,
process.
dude?
I mean, the amount of heroin that was coming into the Fort Bragg area. There was a small airport near Fort Bragg that you write about.
Well, yeah,
It's
just
kind of
weird, really weird
staggering. I
things
mean,
going on. What the fuck?
just massive amounts, and much of it was funneled through
So the
not
military
just
just kills
former
whoever they
members of
want
special
now, I
forces
guess,
units, but active members of special forces
just
units.
because they can.
Yeah, that
Right?
airport, the Rayford Drop Zone,
Wow.
or the PK Air Park, it's sometimes called, that's a privately owned business. And if I told a lie about them being involved in that institution, that facility being involved in international drug trafficking, they could turn around and sue me for defamation really quickly.
There we
But
go.
the facts are clear. The facts are nailed down. There are criminal prosecutions that have either taken place or that have been fully adjudicated.
Pretty
Show
soon
that
they'll drop.
airport, which is where Delta Force does its
The
parachute
mask
training,
will
has been
completely
a hub
drop,
of
and we'll
international
find
drug
out
trafficking since
who's
the
really in
1980s,
control.
and involving
It'll be
current
General
or
so and
former
so,
special
Admiral so
forces
and so,
soldiers
and
trafficking
then you'll
drugs
find
into the
out, oh,
United
he's a
States by
part of
air,
this family.
landing them and offloading them in this airport that's within
And
Fort
we'll be
Bragg's
right back
airspace,
to Italy,
and is
right back to
contiguous with the
Rome.
base,
You know, it was
and has been
Caesar's
a center of Delta
mafia.
Force training for
Like, it
decades.
was all family, dude.
Most
It was all
recently,
Game of Thrones.
the manager of the airport, a guy named Tim
Oh, okay.
Thacker, whose father, Gene Thacker, was an OG Green Beret, who was the sort of the pioneer of this illicit enterprise. Tim Thacker, the son, was convicted
At least
relatively
it'll be
recently
more honest, you know
of
what I mean?
methamphetamine trafficking, and was said by North Carolina prosecutors to have been the biggest meth trafficker in that state's history. That's just one story I tell about systemic drug trafficking taking place in the special forces, you know, around Fort Bragg. And you know, to answer your question or to elaborate a little bit more, I think it often has to do with that
Can't
need for
believe they
stimulation we're talking
reconstituted
about. Sometimes
the
these guys
Praetorian
aren't
Guard,
necessarily
dude.
doing it for money, like you said. They have a
They
certain skill
literally,
set, this irregular warfare skill set, this attitude, this mindset of
yeah, that's a
doing
trip.
things secretly and getting away with it. That's something that tends to
You
port
know how
over
many
relatively
emperors those
easily
guys killed,
to the
dude?
drug trade. And Billy Levine, in his memoir that he
Yeah.
wrote that I obtained
Some
after
of
my
them,
book was
dude, we had
published,
5 emperors in 1
he
year one
talks about
time, bro.
specifically this, about how
Or was it
as he
3?
started
But
to
I
get
think it
into
was
the
like
drug
the
game
year of 5
and
emperors,
started meeting
man.
higher level drug traffickers,
Like,
they were
fuck,
very
dude.
interested in
Yeah.
his background and understood that his skill set
Huh.
was very valuable to him.
last night.
And he became an
Yeah.
advisor to the cartel,
Everything I could to get
helping
sleep,
them
and
do
I was like
things
counting sheep.
like
I was
understand
doing
police
like
I
surveillance.
used to have to
Because
do,
of
yeah, it
course,
sucks.
as
I
a
was
Delta
doing
was
like
operated. He
military
understood these things very,
style
very
ways to
well,
make you
what the
fall asleep.
capabilities
You know, like
limitations were
classical
of
music, fall
surveillance,
asleep
how it
to.
works, and how to
And then
evade
I
it.
had to go to the
And
bathroom.
also, he was
And when I
helping
come
them
back, I look at
traffic
it's like
drugs
4
by
in the
air
morning.
from Central America
I cried
into
all
the
over.
United States, including through the use of
I used to,
cargo,
and I don't know if it's
like
good or not
dropping
always,
dropping
but
drug cargo
I
with a
used to like
parachute plane,
fantasize
either
about if I
without a
was
person or
rich,
accompanied by
and not in a
a
bad
parachute
way, but like
jumper.
what I
I
would
mean, this
do
is
if
the
I won the
tactic
lotto.
that has
Like
been
if I won
used
$500
at
million,
the airport and in this community
and
since
then
the
I'd be like,
1980s.
oh,
They will fly
back in the
drugs
day,
in from
I want a
overseas,
boys
and they
camp.
will jump out with
That
it
was my big. I'd want a
into
horse
some of the
ranch,
national
boys
forests around
camp.
North Carolina or Tennessee
That
or
was
Georgia.
my.
And
Because hurt
maybe come
boys
back for it
dream of
later
helping other
or
hurt
what have you.
boys.
But
It's a
that's
trope.
the game that they're
When
playing
you're a damaged,
for practice. Been going on
traumatized
for a
youth,
long
that's why a
time.
lot of those go
And
into.
whenever it comes to light, it tends
You're
to get
drawn to other
passed over or
traumatized
actually
youth.
covered up by
So
the
that's
military
what they
command.
call it. You
What's
want to
that?
save yourself.
There's that quote that's like, children that know nothing but war and children that know nothing but peace.
Yeah.
Both want the other of what they're doing.
What the other. But yeah, it would help me. It would help me drift off, and I would slowly. So.
Beginnings and endings are very strange things. In one sense, they're the very opposite of one another.
So there's a
and
new
yet
guy
in another,
in
they share a
the
strange kind of identity.
New York City
The living of
mayoral
the home
election.
is
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
super
the
invested in
entrance
this
and
because
the
it's like
exit of the
steep.
house.
Okay, so
And it's
No, New
wonder
York.
that
The
many
mayor of
cultures
New
spend a
York is
great deal of
next. That's
magical
almost
attention
president,
on this
dude.
very point.
Like there's
Cuomo,
governor of
And
New
it's here that we
York
find
too. Could
ourselves
be
at
a
the very
big deal, but
limit of the year.
New York's a big
At the
city.
very
Yeah.
end of
Cuomo lost the
2020 and
Democratic
at the
primary.
beginning of
Oh, he did, huh?
Versus
entering
Rohan
the month of the
Mamdani
two-headed
won.
god of
Right?
Janus, the
He's the
month of
The
Muslim.
foreign
January.
guy.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course,
The
Janus
one
was
born
the
in
Roman
Ghana.
god of beginnings and endings,
He's
of
foreign.
gates,
I didn't
of
know
the
he was
rising and
foreign
falling
born.
tide
He was
of
foreign
war,
born. He
and
was
of
Oh,
raised here in
the
America,
past
but he
and
was
the
born in
present.
Ghana.
And here we find ourselves looking
Yep.
back into the past of
Now we are
2020
Rome.
and
Yeah.
peering, though
No, the
dimly,
emperors,
into the
they
future
don't
of
have to be born here
2021.
anymore. Yeah, that's fine.
With
Yeah.
this liminal attitude in
And so
mind, what
so
better
now he's continuing
esoteric
his
text to
campaign as an
explore
independent.
than the wonderfully
Yeah.
And
paradoxical
then
text, Thunder,
the
Perfect
Republican
Mind,
primary
found in the
is
famous
this
Nag
guy named
Hammadi
Curtis
library containing one of our
Sliwa.
greatest treasure
And
troves of
he's
Gnostic
like
literature.
this
Thunder
dude
is a text
that
all
was
unto
like,
itself.
he was raised in New York his whole life. He was like a